Ezra McAllister hadn't touched another human being in 18 years. Not a handshake, not a shoulder pat, nothing. His hands had buried his daughter, packed his wife's trunk, and built walls ever since. They'd forgotten what warmth felt like. But tonight those same hands were pulling a half-dead child through his window. She was bleeding, she was frozen, and she was looking at him with his dead wife's eyes. "Mama said you owe us," she whispered. "Said you'd know what that means." He didn't. But God help him, he was about to find out. If you want to know what debt this broken rancher owes and why this child's mama sent her through a blizzard to collect it, subscribe to my channel and stay until the end. Drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. The child's blood was freezing on his windowsill. Ezra saw it first. Dark drops turning to ice crystals on the wood, each one catching the lamplight like a tiny ruby. Then he saw the fingers, small, pale, pressed flat against the glass from outside, trembling so hard the frost shook loose in patches. He crossed the room in 3 strides and threw open the window. She fell forward into his arms. "Lord Almighty?" The words came out rough, scraping past 18 years of rust. He caught her before she hit the floor, and she weighed nothing. Bones wrapped in a flour sack dress, one shoe gone, blood matted in her yellow hair. She looked up at him. Ezra stopped breathing. Martha's eyes, brown as autumn honey flecked with gold near the center. His dead wife's eyes staring up at him from a stranger's face. "You Ezra McAllister?" Her voice was barely a whisper, lips blue teeth chattering. "I am." Mama said find the copper sun. Her head rolled toward the window, toward the weather vane on his barn roof, the one he'd forged himself 30 years ago, when dreams still meant something. "Said you'd know what to do." Then her eyes closed, and she went limp in his arms. Ezra laid her on the kitchen floor near the wood stove. His hands moved without permission, stoking the fire, grabbing blankets, doing things they hadn't done in almost 2 decades, caring for someone other than himself. He knelt beside her and peeled back the collar of her dress. Bruises. Finger-shaped bruises wrapped around her throat like a necklace from hell. More on her arms. A cut above her eyebrow crusted with dried blood and fresh ice. Her bare foot was torn up, rocks and thorns embedded in the flesh. She'd run a long way, run hard. "Who did this to you?" he said, though she couldn't hear him. The back door opened. Cold air rushed in, and with it came Samuel Whitehorse, his silver braids swinging, his dark eyes taking in the scene without a flicker of surprise. "Saw tracks in the snow," Red Bear said. "Small feet, running." She came through the window. Red Bear crossed to where the girl lay. He crouched down, studied her face, then looked up at Ezra with something strange in his expression. "She got your wife's eyes." "I noticed. That ain't coincidence." "I know that too." Red Bear stood. "I'll get water, warm, and the medicine bag." He left. Ezra stayed watching the girl breathe, in and out, in and out. Each breath a small miracle he hadn't asked for. She woke an hour later fighting. Her fists came up swinging before her eyes were even open, and she caught Ezra across the jaw hard enough to make him taste blood. He grabbed her wrists gentle as he could manage, and held on while she thrashed. "Easy. Easy now. You're safe." "Let go of me." "I will. Soon as you stop trying to knock my teeth out." She went still. Her eyes focused on his face, then darted around the room, the wood stove, the rough-hewn walls, the rifle mounted above the mantel. Calculating. Looking for exits. "Where am I?" "McAllister Ranch. Wind River Valley." "How far from town?" "Far enough." Something in her shoulders loosened. Just a fraction. "He won't find me here." "Who?" She didn't answer, just pulled her wrists free and scooted back until her spine hit the wall. She drew her knees up to her chest and wrapped her arms around them, making herself small. Ezra stayed where he was, didn't crowd her. He'd gentled enough wild horses to know when to give an animal space. "You got a name?" he asked. "Sadie. Sadie Ruth Brennan." "All right, Sadie Ruth Brennan." He pointed to the cup of water on the floor beside her. "You're gonna drink that. Then you're gonna eat something. Then you're gonna tell me who you're running from and why your mama sent you to find my weather vane." She looked at the water like it might be poison, then back at him, then at the water again. "How do I know you ain't like him?" "Like who?" "The deacon." Ezra's jaw tightened. "I ain't a deacon. Ain't been to church in 18 years. "Why not?" "God and I had a disagreement. He took something from me. I stopped talking to him." Sadie considered this. Something shifted in her eyes, recognition maybe. Understanding. She picked up the cup and drank. Red Bear came back with a basin of warm water, clean rags, and a leather pouch that smelled of sage and something sharper. He set everything down beside Sadie without a word. "I'm gonna clean those cuts," Ezra said. "Might sting some." "I know how cuts work." "Reckon you do." He started with her feet. The wounds were worse than he'd thought, deep gashes from creek rocks, thorns buried so far, he needed tweezers to get them out. Through it all, Sadie sat perfectly still. Didn't flinch. Didn't make a sound. Just watched his hands like she was memorizing every movement. "This hurt?" he asked. "Yes." "You ain't showing it." "Showing it don't help none. Just makes them hit harder." Ezra's hands stopped. He looked up at her face, at those honey-brown eyes that belonged to a woman dead 15 years. "Who hits harder when you show pain?" Sadie's mouth pressed into a thin line. She turned her head away. He went back to work, but the rage was building now, slow and hot, like coals being stoked into flame. Red Bear spoke from the doorway. "Them bruises on her throat. They're fresh. Day old maybe too." "I can see that." "Finger marks. Man's hands. Big ones." "I can see that too." Red Bear nodded once. "Good. Just making sure you're paying attention." He walked out. The door closed soft behind him. After her feet were bandaged, Ezra gave her a bowl of venison stew. It was 3 days old and thick as mud, but she ate it like it was the finest meal in the Wyoming Territory. Scraped the bowl clean, looked at it like she wanted to lick it, but knew better. "When'd you eat last?" Ezra asked. 2 days ago, maybe 3. "That when you ran?" A nod. Small. Quick. "How far'd you come?" "Don't know. Just kept moving. Followed the creek, then the ridge, then I saw the copper sun catching the moonlight, and I remembered what Mama said." Ezra leaned back in his chair. The fire crackled between them. Outside, the wind had picked up, throwing handfuls of sleet against the windows. "Your mama," he said carefully. "What exactly did she tell you?" Sadie set the bowl down, her hands curled into fists in her lap. She was dying. Consumption. Took her slow coughing and coughing till there wasn't nothing left to cough up. Her voice stayed flat, reciting facts. "Last night she grabbed my arm, pulled me close. Said, 'Sadie Ruth, when I'm gone, you run. Run north till you find the ranch with the copper sun. Man there owes me a debt. Owes you one too, though he don't know it yet.'" Ezra's chest went tight. "She say what kind of debt?" "No, sir. Just said you was a good man who'd forgotten how to be good. Said you'd remember if someone reminded you." The words hit him like a fist to the gut. A good man who'd forgotten how to be good. Was that what Martha had thought of him? Was that the legacy he'd left? "Your mama," he said, voice rough. "What was her name?" "Colleen. Colleen Brennan." The name meant nothing. He'd never known anyone named Colleen. But there was something in Sadie's face, something in those familiar eyes that told him this wasn't finished, that there was more to come. She ever mention a woman named Martha? Sadie went very still. "That was my grandmother's name," she said quietly. "Mama's mama. Never met her." She died before I was born. She paused. How'd you know that? The fire popped. A log shifted, sending sparks up the chimney. Ezra couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. The pieces were falling into place now, clicking together like the chambers of a revolver. Martha had a daughter before him. A daughter she'd never told him about. Given up, hidden away, erased from the story of who she was. And that daughter had a daughter. And that daughter was sitting in his kitchen, wearing his dead wife's eyes, asking about a debt he was only now beginning to understand. I think, Ezra said slowly, you better start from the beginning. Sadie pulled the blanket tighter around her shoulders. She looked small beneath it, fragile, but her voice came out steady. Mama never talked about her people, said it hurt too much. But when she was dying, things started coming out. Stuff she'd kept buried her whole life. Like what? Like she was born in a place called Cheyenne. Like her mama, my grandmother gave her up when she was just a baby. Wasn't married, see? And back then, a girl in that situation... She shrugged. Didn't have no choices. Ezra's hands curled on his knees. Martha had lived in Cheyenne before they met. She'd never talked about her past, and he'd never asked. Too busy building his empire. Too proud to dig into the dirt of other people's pain. Mama said her mama cried when she handed her over. Cried so hard she couldn't stand. Sadie's voice wavered for the first time. Said she found out later that her mama got married. Had another little girl. Named her Grace. The name hit Ezra like a bullet. Grace. His daughter's name. The daughter buried on the hill, the one he'd lost to fever 18 years ago, the one whose room he hadn't entered since the day they put her in the ground. Your grandmother, he said, and his voice came out broken, was my wife. Sadie stared at him. The fire cast shadows on her face, making her look older, making her look like a ghost. That mean we're kin? I don't know what it means. He ran a hand over his face. I just know your grandmother Martha had a secret she kept from me our whole marriage. And I reckon that secret has something to do with why you're sitting in my kitchen bleeding all over my floor. Sadie was quiet for a long moment. Then, Mama said something else. Before she died. What? Said you'd lost a daughter too. Said grief turned you to stone. Said maybe I could remind you how to feel again. She looked up at him, and there was no guile in her face, no manipulation, just a child's desperate hope. That's what she meant by the debt, I think. You don't owe us money. You owe us a chance to be a family. Ezra stood abruptly. His chair scraped against the floor. He walked to the window and stood there, staring out at the snow, at the dark shapes of his barns and fences, at the empire he'd built out of grief and solitude. A family. He hadn't had a family in 18 years. Hadn't wanted one. Hadn't let himself want one. And now this child, this bruised, bloody, half-frozen child, was offering him one like it was nothing. Like it was easy. Like he deserved it. I ain't a good man, he said without turning around. Mama said you'd say that. Your mama didn't know me. Maybe not, but my grandmother did. And she sent a message through my mama to me. Sadie's voice was closer now. She'd crossed the room to stand behind him. She said, tell him I forgive him. Tell him it ain't too late. Ezra's eyes burned. He pressed his forehead against the cold glass. Forgive me for what? Don't know. That's between you and her. The wind howled outside. The copper weather vane creaked on the barn roof, turning, pointing in whatever direction the storm demanded. There's a man coming for you, Ezra said finally. The one who did this, the deacon. Yes, sir. He's gonna bring the law, gonna bring papers, gonna say you're his by right. I know. Ezra turned. Sadie stood there in her torn dress and borrowed blanket, her bandaged feet, her bruised throat, her grandmother's eyes. You want to stay here, he said. You're gonna have to trust me. You gonna hurt me? Never. You gonna send me back? Not while I'm breathing. She searched his face for a long moment, looking for the lie, looking for the trap. She didn't find one. "All right then," she said. "I reckon I can try." Child. That night, Ezra gave her the settee by the fire. He found one of Martha's old quilts in the chest he hadn't opened in 15 years, blue wool with white stars stitched by hands that had been dust for more than a decade. Sadie ran her fingers over the fabric. "This was hers, wasn't it? My grandmother's." "It was. It smells like lavender. She used to keep sachets in all the drawers, said it kept the moths away." Sadie pulled the quilt up to her chin and curled onto her side facing the fire. Ezra lowered himself into the chair across from her, the chair where he'd sat alone every night for 18 years, drinking whiskey and waiting for nothing. "Mr. McAllister?" "Yeah." "That debt Mama talked about." Sadie's voice was getting sleepy, her words slowing. "I ain't here to collect it. Don't even know what it is. I just needed somewhere to go. Somewhere he couldn't find me." "You got somewhere," Ezra said. "Long as you need it." She was quiet. "Then, you mean that—" "I don't say things I don't mean. Waste of breath." A small sound escaped her. Not quite a laugh, not quite a sob. Something in between. "Mama said you was rough as a cob, but soft in the middle. Your mama talked too much. That's what killed her, I think. Kept all them secrets locked up so long they poisoned her from the inside." Ezra didn't have an answer for that. Didn't have an answer for most of what this child said. She spoke like someone 3 times her age, like someone who'd lived too much and lost too much and come out the other side knowing things no 11-year-old should know. He understood that. He'd been that way too once. Before Martha softened him. Before Grace gentled him. Before death came and took them both and left him harder than he'd ever been. "Get some sleep," he said. "Yes, sir." And Sadie, "Yeah." "Don't call me sir. Makes me feel old." "What should I call you then?" He thought about it. Mr. McAllister was too formal. Ezra was too familiar. Everything felt wrong, like trying on clothes that didn't fit. "Reckon we'll figure that out," he said finally. "Got time?" She closed her eyes. Within minutes her breathing slowed and evened, and she was asleep. Ezra sat watching her. The fire burned low. The wind died to a whisper. The quilt rose and fell with each breath, and the lamplight caught the gold flecks in her closed eyes. Martha's eyes. Grace's almost eyes. Something new. Something his. He didn't sleep that night. But for the first time in 18 years, he didn't mind the not sleeping. Mayor. Morning came gray and cold. Sadie woke to the smell of coffee burning and biscuits that could break a tooth. She sat up on the settee, the quilt falling around her waist, and found Ezra standing at the stove looking lost. "You ain't much of a cook," she observed. "Never claimed to be." She pushed the quilt aside and padded to the kitchen on her bandaged feet. Ezra watched her take the pan off the heat, scrape the burned bits into the slop bucket, and crack 4 eggs into the remaining grease with the ease of long practice. "Your mama teach you that?" "Had to learn. She was too sick to cook by the end. And he—" She stopped. "The deacon didn't care if we ate or not," said hunger-built character. Ezra's jaw tightened. "What else did he say?" Sadie kept her eyes on the eggs. "Said I was sinful by nature. Said the only way to beat the devil out was to actually beat him out." She flipped the eggs neat and quick. "Said God told him to discipline me. Said God told him lots of things. God don't tell men to hurt children. That's what I thought too. Told him so once." She touched the scar above her eyebrow. "Learned not to say it twice." Red Bear came through the back door, stamping snow off his boots. He took in the scene, the girl cooking, Ezra standing useless, the burned biscuits cooling on the counter, and his mouth twitched. "She's already more useful than you." "Shut up." "Just making an observation." Sadie looked between them, curious. You two always talk to each other like that. 30 years, Red Bear said. Gets comfortable after a while. Like an old boot. Like an old boot that complains too much and can't cook. Ezra made a sound that might have been a laugh if he'd remembered how. Sadie's eyes went wide. Did you just... No? I think you did. Eat your eggs. She ate. They all ate. The eggs were good. The biscuits were not. The coffee was bitter as regret, but it was hot, and outside the snow was falling again, and for a few minutes the kitchen felt almost warm. Then Sadie said, He's coming, you know, the deacon. He won't stop. Ezra set down his cup. Tell me about him. His name's Cyrus Blackwood. Came from back east somewhere. Boston, maybe? Says he's a man of God, but... She shook her head. Men of God don't have eyes like his. What kind of eyes? Empty ones. Like there's nothing behind them but wanting. He looks at people like they're things. Things to own. Things to use. Red Bear leaned back in his chair. He got legal claim to you. Got papers. Mama signed them before she passed. Said she didn't have no choice, said it was sign, or watch me go to the orphan train. Sadie's hands curled into fists. But she didn't know what he was. Not then. By the time she found out, she was too sick to do nothing about it. So he's got the law on his side, Ezra said. Law and the church and half the town. Everyone thinks he's a saint. Everyone except the children he collects. Collects? That's what he calls it. Collecting souls for God. Got 4 of us now living in his house, working his land, taking his discipline. Her voice went bitter. Only I'm the only one who ever tried to run. The others are too scared, too broken. Ezra stood and walked to the window. The snow was getting heavier now, building up on the fence posts and barn roof. The copper weather vanes spun and spun, catching the gray light. He'll come with the sheriff, Sadie said behind him. Maybe a federal man too if he can get one. He knows people, important people. They all believe his lies. What about the truth? Truth don't matter when a deacon's telling the lies. Ezra turned. It matters to me. Sadie looked at him. Those eyes. Those impossible familiar eyes. Why? She asked. You don't know me. Don't owe me nothing. Why would you fight a deacon and the law for some girl who showed up bleeding on your floor? It was a fair question. A week ago, he wouldn't have had an answer. A week ago, he would have sent her away, closed his window, gone back to his whiskey and his silence and his slow march toward death. But that was before she looked at him with Martha's eyes. Before she spoke about debts and forgiveness and second chances. Before she curled up under his dead wife's quilt and slept like she trusted him. Because you're kin, Ezra said. Maybe not by blood, maybe not by law. But kin ain't always about blood and law. Sometimes it's about who shows up, who stays. And you're staying. I'm staying. Sadie's chin trembled. She pressed her lips together hard, fighting something. And for a moment she looked like what she was, an 11-year-old girl who'd been hurt too much and trusted too little and wanted so badly to believe that safety was real. Okay, she whispered. Okay. Red Bear cleared his throat. Rider coming. They all turned to the window. A dark shape was moving through the snow, coming up the long drive from the main road. 1 horse, 1 man, moving slow but steady. Sadie went pale. That's him. That's... No. Red Bear squinted through the glass. That's Earl Hollister. Works for Blackwood, but he ain't the deacon. He's worse, Sadie said. He's the one who catches us when we run. Ezra reached for his coat. Stay inside, both of you. Ezra? I said stay. He walked out into the snow. Earl Hollister pulled up 10 yards from the porch. He was a big man, thick through the shoulders, with a face like a closed fist. His horse was well fed, but poorly treated, its mouth raw from a harsh bit. He looked at Ezra the way a snake looks at a mouse. Mr. McAllister? Hollister. Looking for something that belongs to Deacon Blackwood. Little girl, yellow hair, probably beat up some. You seen her? Ezra hooked his thumbs in his belt. Lot of little girls in the territory. Gonna have to be more specific. Don't play games with me, old man. Tracks lead right to your property. I know she's here. Then I reckon you know wrong. Hollister's eyes narrowed. He leaned forward in his saddle. The deacon's got legal papers. Sheriff Tucker's backing his claim. You want to make this hard, we can make it hard. But either way, that girl's coming back with us. That so? That's so. Ezra didn't move, didn't blink, just stood there in the falling snow, letting the silence stretch. You ever wonder, he said finally, why a child runs 15 miles in the middle of a blizzard, runs till her feet are bleeding and her lips are blue? You ever ask yourself what kind of man a child runs from like that? Hollister's face went red. That ain't none of my concern. It's your concern now. Because you're on my land. And on my land, men who hurt children don't get to walk away easy. You threatening me? I'm telling you facts. For a long moment, neither man moved. The snow fell between them thick and silent. Then Hollister spat into the white. You're making a mistake, McAllister. Deacon Blackwood don't forget. Don't forgive neither. Good. Neither do I. Hollister yanked his horse's head around and kicked it into a trot. Ezra watched him go until he was just a dark smear against the gray, then nothing at all. When he turned back toward the house, Red Bear was standing on the porch. That was stupid, Red Bear said. Probably. He's gonna come back, with more men, with the law. I know. And you're gonna stand here and wait for him. Ezra looked at the house. Through the window, he could see Sadie's face pale and scared watching him. No, he said. I'm gonna get ready. That night, Ezra did something he hadn't done in 18 years. He walked down the hallway to the locked door at the end. The one he'd sealed shut after Grace died. The one that held everything he couldn't bear to face. His hand trembled on the brass handle. Sadie appeared behind him, quiet as a ghost. What's in there? He should have sent her away. Should have told her it was none of her business. But she was standing there with Martha's eyes, and he was so tired of carrying this alone. My daughter, he said. Everything that's left of her. The one who died? Grace. Her name was Grace. Sadie was quiet for a moment. Then, you don't have to open it. I think maybe I do. He turned the handle. The door swung open, and Ezra McAllister stepped into the past. The dust rose like a congregation of ghosts. Ezra stood in the doorway, unable to move. 18 years of stillness pressed against him from inside the room. 18 years of untouched blankets and unworn dresses, and a porcelain doll sitting on a pillow where a little girl's head should have been. Grace, he whispered. Sadie stayed behind him close, but not touching. She didn't speak, didn't push, just waited the way someone waits, who knows grief takes its own time. Ezra's boots left prints in the dust as he crossed to the bed. The quilt was white-yellowed now, and the iron frame had gone dull with neglect. He reached down and picked up the doll. Corn silk hair, blue glass eyes, a painted smile that hadn't faded. Rosie, he said. She called her Rosie, carried her everywhere. She's pretty. Grace was prettier. His voice cracked. Prettiest thing I ever saw. Had her mama's smile and my stubborn streak and this laugh that sounded like bells ringing. Sadie moved into the room. Her bandaged feet left smaller prints beside his. How old was she when she... 6. 6 years, 4 months, 11 days. You counted. Every day since. Sadie sat on the edge of the bed. The springs creaked, the first sound they'd made in almost 2 decades. She looked up at him with those honey-brown eyes, Martha's eyes, and said something that broke him clean in half. Tell me about her. And God help him, he did. He told her about Grace's first steps, how she'd walked straight into his arms and laughed like she'd conquered the world. He told her about the songs Martha used to sing at bedtime, and how Grace would demand, One more, Mama, just one more, until she fell asleep mid-verse. He told her about the time Grace found a baby rabbit in the barn and insisted on nursing it back to health, and how she'd cried for 3 days when it finally hopped away. He told her about the fever. I wasn't here. The words came out like blood from a wound. I was in Cheyenne closing a cattle deal. Martha sent word Grace was sick, but I told myself she'd pull through. She was strong. She was always so strong. But she didn't. No, she didn't. Sadie was quiet. Then, my mama died while I was holding her hand. Felt her go. Felt her fingers get cold and her breathing stop, and then there was just nothing. Ezra looked at her. I'm sorry, he said. Don't be. I got to say goodbye. That's more than most folks get. More than I got. I know. They sat together in the dusty room, the old man and the broken child surrounded by ghosts neither of them could see, but both of them could feel. Grace called for me, Ezra said finally. At the end, Martha told me later, she kept asking for. Her papa kept looking at the door waiting for me to come through it. His hands tightened on the doll. And I never did. That why you locked this room up? That's why I locked everything up. This room, my heart, anything that might remind me of what I lost. He set Rosie back on the pillow gentle, as if she might break. Thought if I didn't feel it, it couldn't hurt me. Did it work? What do you think? Sadie looked around the room, the small dresses hanging in the open wardrobe, the picture books on the shelf, the tiny boots lined up by the door. I think it made it worse, she said. I think the hurt just got bigger in the dark. Ezra didn't answer. Didn't have to. They left the room together, but this time he didn't close the door behind him. The next morning, Sadie made breakfast. She'd found flour and lard in the pantry, eggs in the henhouse, bacon in the smokehouse. By the time Ezra came downstairs, the kitchen smelled like something it hadn't smelled like in 18 years. Home. Sit, she said, pointing to the table with a wooden spoon. It's almost ready. You don't have to. I know I don't have to. I want to. He sat. Red Bear came in through the back door, stopped, sniffed the air, and raised an eyebrow. She can cook? Better than you, Sadie said without turning around. Better than him too. That ain't hard. Didn't say it was. Red Bear sat across from Ezra. Something passed between them, a look, a recognition of something shifting in the house, something waking up. Sadie set plates in front of them. Biscuits that were actually fluffy, bacon fried crisp, eggs done perfect, the yolk still soft. Ezra took a bite and had to close his eyes. What? Sadie asked, suddenly worried. Is it bad I can make more if... It's not bad. Then why do you look like that? Because it's good. And I forgot what good tasted like. Sadie's face did something complicated, pleasure and pain, and something else, something like hope. They ate in silence, but it was a different silence than before, fuller somehow, less empty. When the plates were clean, Sadie started washing up without being asked. Ezra watched her move around his kitchen like she'd been doing it for years. You ain't gotta work for your keep, he said. You know that, right? I ain't working for my keep. I'm helping because I want to. Why? She turned to look at him, dish towel in her hands. Because you opened that door last night. The one you've been scared of for 18 years. She paused. That took courage. I figure the least I can do is make you breakfast. Ezra didn't know what to say to that. Didn't know what to do with the feeling expanding in his chest. Besides, Sadie added, turning back to the dishes, idle hands are the devil's workshop. That's what the deacon always said. Her voice went bitter. Course he was usually saying it right before he put those idle hands to work breaking rocks or hauling water or... She stopped. Her shoulders went tight. Or what? Ezra asked quietly. Nothing. Sadie? She didn't turn around. He's got a cellar. Under his house. He puts us down there when we sin. Says it's for our own good to think about what we done wrong in the dark. Ezra's hands curled into fists. How long? Depends on the sin. Talking back, that's a day. Running away, that's a week. Her voice stayed flat, controlled. I was down there for 9 days once. Caught trying to climb out a window. By the time he let me out, I couldn't stand up straight. Couldn't see right in the light. The rage came up so fast it nearly choked him. Ezra stood chair-scraping, needing to move, needing to hit something. That man comes here, he said. He ain't leaving alive. Sadie turned. Her face was pale but calm. You can't kill him. They'd hang you for it. Might be worth it. No. She crossed the room and stood in front of him, small and fierce. You dying don't help me none. You living, you fighting smart, that's what helps me. That's what keeps me safe. Ezra looked down at her, this child who'd been through hell and come out with more sense than most grown men. How'd you get so wise? He asked. Had to. Wasn't no one else gonna be wise for me. Red Bear spoke from the doorway. Rider coming? Different one this time? They all moved to the window. A single horse was picking its way up the snow-covered drive, moving slow and careful. The rider was hunched against the cold, wrapped in a heavy coat. That's Doc Carver, Ezra said. The town doctor. Sadie's voice went sharp. He's the one who fixed my ribs. Didn't ask questions. Didn't say nothing. He's also the one who might have said something if he wasn't scared. Man's got a conscience buried under all that fear. Why's he coming here? Guess we're about to find out. Doc Carver tied his horse to the porch rail and came inside with snow on his shoulders and worry on his face. He was a thin man getting old with hands that shook slightly and eyes that couldn't quite meet anyone else's. Ezra, he said, I heard Earl Hollister came by yesterday. News travels fast. In this territory always. Doc Carver's gaze flickered to Sadie, then away. I came to warn you. Deacon Blackwood's riding for Helena, going to get a federal marshal. Says he'll be back by week's end with enough law to tear your ranch apart. Let him try. This ain't a joke, Ezra. The man's got connections, got papers, got the whole damn church behind him. And I got the truth. Doc Carver laughed, but there was no humor in it. Truth don't matter when a deacon's doing the talking, you know that. Then why are you here? The doctor went quiet. His hands twisted together in front of him. Because I should have said something, he said finally. 2 years ago, when that girl came to me with broken ribs and a story about falling off a horse, I knew it was a lie. Knew someone had hurt her. But Blackwood had loaned me money, and the church was threatening to foreclose on my practice, and I... He trailed off. His shoulders slumped. I was a coward. Sadie stepped forward. Her voice was cold. You were. Doc Carver flinched. I know I was. But I'm trying to... Trying to what? Make up for it you can't. Those ribs healed crooked because you didn't set them right. Because you were in too much of a hurry to ask questions. Sadie, Ezra said quietly. No. She turned on him, eyes blazing. He doesn't get to walk in here and act like he's helping when he's the reason I spent 2 months breathing around broken bones. He doesn't get to feel better about himself by warning us about something we already knew. The room went silent. Doc Carver looked like he'd been slapped. You're right, he said. I don't. I don't deserve forgiveness, and I ain't asking for it. He took a breath. But I can tell you what I know. Blackwood's got more than papers. He's got witnesses. People in town who'll swear that girl's a liar and a troublemaker, that she makes up stories that she's the one causing problems. Who? Ezra demanded. The Hollisters, Widow Marsh, Pastor Jennings from the Methodist Church, all people who owe Blackwood money or favors. Doc Carver shook his head. He's been building this for years, collecting debts, making friends, setting up a wall of respectable citizens who'll back whatever he says. So it's his word against a child's. It's worse than that. It's his word and the word of half the town against a child who's known for running away and making accusations. Sadie made a sound small and hurt. Ezra moved to stand beside her. His hand came down on her shoulder the first time he'd touched her voluntarily. "What about physical evidence?" he asked. "The bruises, the scars, the ribs you said healed crooked. Evidence of what a child who falls down a lot, who gets into accidents." Doc Carver's voice was bitter now. "I've seen it before, Ezra. Seen it more times than I can count. People believe what they want to believe, and they want to believe that a man of God wouldn't hurt a child. Even when the proof is right in front of them. Especially then, because if they admit the proof is real, they have to admit they let it happen. They have to admit they saw the signs and did nothing." He looked at Sadie, and for the first time, his eyes stayed on her face. They have to admit they failed her, and nobody wants to do that. The fire crackled in the silence that followed. "Why are you really here?" Ezra asked. "Not just to warn us. You could have done that with a letter." Doc Carver reached into his coat and pulled out a folded paper. "This is a medical report. Detailed. Everything I found when I treated her 2 years ago, and everything I should have reported but didn't." He held it out. "It ain't much, but it's something. And if you can find a judge who ain't in Blackwood's pocket, it might help." Ezra took the paper, read it. The clinical words, "contusions consistent with repeated blunt force trauma fractures, indicative of violent impact scarring, suggesting prolonged abuse," made his stomach turn. This is enough to hang him. In a fair court, maybe. But there ain't no fair courts in Wind River. Not when the accused owns half the town. Doc Carver moved toward the door. "I've done what I can. The rest is up to you." He paused with his hand on the latch. "For what it's worth," he said without turning around. "I'm sorry. I know it don't mean much, but I'm sorry." He left. The door closed behind him. Sadie stood rigid, staring at the floor. "Sadie," Ezra started. "I need a minute." She walked out the back door into the snow. Didn't take a coat, didn't take anything. Ezra started to follow, but Red Bear stopped him with a hand on his arm. "Let her go. She needs to feel this. It's freezing out there." "Anger keeps you warm. Believe me, I know." They watched through the window as Sadie walked to the fence line and stopped. Her small figure stood dark against the white shoulders heaving. "She's crying," Ezra said. "First time since she got here. That's good. Means she's starting to trust it's safe." Safe. The word tasted bitter. "Nothing about this is safe. Blackwood's coming with the law. The whole town's on his side. That doctor's report won't mean nothing if there's no one honest enough to read it." Red Bear was quiet for a moment. Then, "There might be someone." "Who?" "Judge Callahan. Up in Lander. He's got no love for the church and no debts to anyone in Wind River. If you can get Sadie to him, get her to testify." "That's 3 days' ride in good weather. In this," Ezra gestured at the snow falling past the window, "we'd never make it. Then we don't run. We stand and fight. Fight how I got no legal claim to that girl. No proof she's kin. Nothing but a feeling and some old letters I can't even find." Red Bear's eyes sharpened. "Letters. Martha kept everything. Every letter, every scrap of paper. Said she didn't trust her own memory, had to write things down." Ezra rubbed his face. "There's a trunk in the attic. Haven't touched it since she left. If there's anything about her first daughter, anything at all, it'd be in there." "Then maybe you should look." The attic was cold and dark and full of cobwebs. Ezra climbed the ladder with a lantern in one hand, pushing through 18 years of neglect. The trunk sat in the corner where Martha had left it, cedar wood brass fittings, their initials carved into the lid. E and M forever. Forever had lasted 12 years. He knelt beside it and lifted the lid. The smell of lavender and old paper rose up to meet him. Inside were stacks of letters, bundles tied with ribbon journals with cracked leather spines. Martha's whole life preserved in ink and dust. He started reading. Most of it was ordinary. Letters from her sister in St. Louis. Notes about household expenses. Recipes she'd wanted to try. The everyday detritus of a life lived and lost. But halfway through the third bundle, he found something different. A letter addressed to my dearest daughter. Not Grace. Someone else. Ezra's hands trembled as he unfolded it. My dearest daughter. The letter read, I know you will never receive this. I know you will grow up not knowing who I am or why I gave you away. But I need to write these words, need to put them somewhere outside my own head, or they will drive me mad. I was 16 when you were born. 16 and alone and terrified. Your father was gone dead in a mining accident 3 months before you came. There was no money, no family who would take us in no future I could give you. The sisters at St. Agnes said they would find you a good home, a family who could give you what I couldn't. They promised me you would be loved. I hope they were telling the truth. I hope someday somehow you find happiness. I hope you never know the pain of giving up a child. I hope you never understand what it cost me to hand you to that nun and walk away. I will love you until I die. Longer if there's anything beyond this world that allows for such things. Your mother always, Martha. Ezra read it 3 times. Each time the words cut deeper. Martha had a daughter she'd given away before they ever met. A daughter who'd grown up and had a daughter of her own. Colleen. Sadie's mother. Which meant Sadie was Martha's granddaughter. Which meant Sadie was in some twisted way that the law might not recognize, but the heart surely did family. He dug through the rest of the trunk with new urgency, found more letters never sent, found a journal entry from the year they'd married. I should tell Ezra about the baby. He deserves to know. But every time I try, the words stick in my throat. What if he looks at me differently? What if he sees me as damaged goods? He found another entry from the year Grace was born, holding Grace. I think of my first daughter. Wonder where she is, who she's become. Wonder if she has children of her own. I pray she does. I pray someone in my bloodline gets to experience the joy I'm feeling now. And then the last entry, written 3 days before Martha left for good. He won't look at me, won't speak to me, won't let me touch him. Grace is gone and Ezra is gone too, locked behind walls I can't breach. I have to leave. If I stay, I'll die here, not from grief, but from the silence. But before I go, I'm writing one more letter. To my first daughter, wherever she is, telling her everything. The truth about who I am, who her father was, where I live now. I'll send it to the sisters at St. Agnes and pray they can find her. Maybe one day she'll come looking for me. Maybe one day she'll knock on this door and I'll finally get to tell her how sorry I am. How much I love her. How every single day since I gave her up, I've wished I could take it back. If Ezra won't let me in, maybe she will. Ezra set the journal down. His hands were shaking. His eyes were wet. Martha had reached out. Before she died, she'd tried to find her first daughter, tried to bring her home. And somehow, through channels he couldn't trace, and years he couldn't account for, that message had gotten through. Colleen had known, had told Sadie, had sent her here with her dying breath. The debt wasn't money. It wasn't land. It was love. 18 years of it locked away in empty rooms and sealed trunks, and a heart too scared to feel. Sadie deserved that love. Sadie deserved everything Martha had wanted to give, and couldn't. And by God, Ezra was going to make sure she got it. He climbed down from the attic with the letters in his hand. Sadie was back inside, sitting by the fire with a mug of coffee, her cheeks still red from cold, and crying. She looked up when he came in. "What's that? Proof?" He sat down across from her and spread the letters on the table. "Your grandmother wrote these. About your mother. About giving her up. about wanting to find her again. Sadie stared at the papers. Her hand reached out trembling and touched the faded ink. This is her handwriting. It is. And she thought about my mama. All those years. Every single day. She said so herself. Ezra pointed to a passage. Look. I pray she has children of her own. I pray someone in my bloodline gets to experience the joy I'm feeling now. Sadie read the words. Her lips moved silently, tracing each one. She wanted me, she whispered. She didn't even know I existed, but she wanted me. She wanted your mother. And when your mother had you, she would have wanted you too. Would have loved you like her own. Sadie looked up, those honey brown eyes wet now shining in the firelight. And you? Do you want me? The question hung between them. Simple and terrifying and absolutely necessary. Ezra thought about Grace. About the 18 years he'd spent mourning her building walls, shutting out anything that might make him feel again. He thought about Martha, dying alone in a boarding house waiting for him to break down and come find her. He thought about all the love he'd locked away, all the chances he'd missed, all the doors he'd kept closed. He was done with closed doors. Yes, he said. I want you. Sadie's face crumpled. She made a sound, half laugh, half sob, and launched herself across the space between them. Her arms went around his neck, her face pressed against his shoulder, and she cried like she hadn't cried in years. Ezra held her. Held her the way he should have held Grace. The way he should have held Martha. The way he'd been too scared to hold anyone for so long, he'd forgotten what it felt like. It felt like coming home. Red Bear appeared in the doorway. He took in the scene, the letters scattered on the table, the man and girl clinging to each other, the years of grief finally breaking open, and nodded once. About damn time, he said. And then, because he was Red Bear, and he couldn't leave well enough alone. But we got bigger problems. Just saw dust on the South Ridge. Lot of it. Moving fast. Ezra pulled back, wiped his face, stood. How many? Can't tell yet. But more than one rider. More than two. Blackwood. Too soon for him to be back from Helena. But the Hollisters. Red Bear's jaw tightened. They might have decided not to wait. Sadie's face went white. Earl Hollister. And his brother Wade. They're the ones who, when I ran before, they're the ones who caught me. Brought me back. They ain't catching you this time. Ezra moved to the rifle rack above the mantel. Get to the cellar, the one under the kitchen. There's a bolt on the inside. No. Sadie's voice was steady despite her fear. I ain't hiding in another cellar. Not ever again. Ezra turned to argue, but something in her face stopped him. The same steel he'd seen in Martha, the same stubborn fire he'd loved and fought against for 12 years. Then stay behind me, he said. And if I tell you to run, you run. Understand? I understand. He grabbed the rifle, checked the load, and walked out onto the porch. Red Bear was already there, his own weapon ready. The dust cloud was closer now. 3 riders, maybe 4, coming fast. This ain't gonna be pretty, Red Bear said. Nothing worth doing ever is. They waited as the riders crested the last ridge and started down toward the ranch. 4 men, the Hollister brothers in front, 2 others behind, all armed, all riding like they had a purpose. Earl Hollister pulled up 20 yards from the porch. His face was ugly with something that might have been hate or might have been anticipation. McAllister, we've come for the girl. She ain't here. Don't lie to me, old man. We tracked her here. We know she's inside. Then you know wrong. Earl's horse danced beneath him, picking up on its rider's agitation. The deacon's gonna be real disappointed when he gets back and finds out you've been harboring his property. Real disappointed. That girl ain't property. She's a human being. She's a ward of the church, legal and binding. And you've got about 30 seconds to hand her over before we come in and take her. Ezra raised the rifle. You're welcome to try. The other riders spread out flanking, looking for angles. Red Bear tracked them with his own weapon, calm as still water. 4 against 2, Earl said. Bad odds, McAllister. I've had worse. Have you? When's the last time you fired that rifle at anything but a coyote? When's the last time you had to defend anything worth defending? The words hit harder than Earl probably intended. Ezra's grip tightened on the rifle. Today, he said. Today's the last time. Earl's smile faltered. He looked at Red Bear, at the steady weapons, at the determination in both men's eyes. You're making a mistake. Maybe, but it's mine to make. For a long moment, nobody moved. The wind blew snow between them. The horses stamped and snorted. Then Earl Hollister yanked his reins and turned his horse away. This ain't over, he called back. The deacon's coming. With the law, with everything. And when he gets here, you're gonna wish you'd handed her over when you had the chance. He spurred his horse into a gallop. The others followed. Ezra watched them go until they were nothing but specks against the gray. They'll be back, Red Bear said. I know. With more men. With the federal marshal. I know that too. Red Bear lowered his rifle. What's the plan? Ezra thought about the letters in the house, about Sadie's face when she'd read her grandmother's words, about the door he'd finally opened after 18 years. We don't run, he said. We fight. But we fight smart. How? We get those letters to Judge Callahan. We get Sadie's testimony on record. We build a case so solid that even Blackwood's connections can't tear it down. And if that don't work? Ezra looked back at the house. Through the window he could see Sadie's face, pale but determined, watching them. Then we do whatever it takes to keep her safe. Whatever it takes. Red Bear nodded slowly. Been a long time since you had something worth fighting for. Too long. Good to have you back. Ezra almost smiled. Almost. Good to be back. 3 days passed like a held breath. Ezra spent them preparing, copying Martha's letters in his own hand in case the originals got lost or destroyed, teaching Sadie to reload a rifle, though he prayed she'd never have to use one, sending Red Bear into town to gather information to listen to, find out when Blackwood would return. The answer came on the 4th morning. Tomorrow, Red Bear said, stamping snow off his boots as he came through the door. Blackwood's back from Helena. Got a federal marshal with him. Man named Briggs, hard as nails by the book type. They're riding out at first light. Sadie's face went pale. She was sitting at the kitchen table practicing her letters on a slate Ezra had found in the attic. Her hand stopped moving. Tomorrow, she repeated. We knew it was coming, Ezra said. Knowing and feeling are two different things. She was right. They were. What else? Ezra asked Red Bear. Blackwood's been busy. Got statements from half the town saying Sadie's a liar and a troublemaker. Got the church elders backing his claim. Got everything lined up neat and tidy. What about Doc Carver's report? He tried to file it with the county clerk. Clerk refused. Said it was hearsay without corroborating evidence. That's convenient. Blackwood's got friends everywhere. Friends who owe him money. Friends who owe him favors. Red Bear's jaw tightened. This ain't gonna be a fair fight, Ezra. Never was. Then we make it unfair in our direction. How? Ezra looked at the letters spread across the table. Martha's words, Martha's secrets, Martha's love preserved in faded ink. We tell the truth, all of it. About Martha, about her first daughter, about why Sadie's got more right to be here than Blackwood's got right to take her. The marshal won't care about blood ties. He'll care about legal papers. Then we make him care about something else. We make him see what Blackwood really is. Sadie spoke up, her voice small but steady. I can show them. The scars. The places where the bones healed wrong. The cellar door that locks from the outside. That ain't proof of who did it. No, but it's proof something was done. She looked at Ezra. You said truth matters. Does it or doesn't it? The question hung in the air. "It matters," Ezra said finally. "It has to." That night, none of them slept. Ezra sat by the window watching the darkness, waiting for the dawn that would bring his enemies to his door. Sadie lay on the settee, pretending to rest, but her eyes stayed open, fixed on the ceiling. Red Bear paced the perimeter of the house like a wolf circling a threatened den. Somewhere around midnight, Sadie got up and crossed to where Ezra sat. "Can I ask you something?" "Go ahead." "If they take me back," she swallowed hard, "if the law says I have to go with him, will you let them?" Ezra turned to look at her. In the dim lamplight, she looked younger than her 11 years, younger and more scared than she'd ever let herself appear in daylight. "No," he said, "even if it means breaking the law. Some laws are worth breaking. You could go to prison, could lose everything. I've already lost everything once. Lost my daughter, lost my wife, lost 18 years to grief and silence." He reached out and put his hand on her shoulder. "I ain't losing you too." Sadie's chin trembled. "Why, you barely know me." "I know you're brave. I know you're kind. I know you came through a blizzard with bleeding feet because your mama told you to find a man who'd forgotten how to feel." He squeezed her shoulder gently. "And I know you reminded me. That's worth more than land or money or anything else I got." A tear slipped down her cheek. She didn't wipe it away. "Mama said you was a good man. Your mama was smarter than me." "She was smart about a lot of things." Sadie paused. "She was wrong about one thing, though." "What's that?" "She said you'd forgotten how to be good. But I don't think you forgot. I think you just buried it so deep you couldn't find it anymore." She looked up at him with those honey-brown eyes. "It was always there. You just needed someone to help you dig." Ezra couldn't speak. His throat had closed up around something hot and sharp. "Get some rest," he managed finally. "Tomorrow's going to be hard." "I know, but at least we'll face it together." She went back to the settee. Ezra went back to watching the dark. Together. He'd forgotten what that word felt like. He was starting to remember. They came at dawn. Ezra heard the horses first, a lot of them moving fast up the frozen road. He was on the porch before the first rider crested the ridge rifle in his hands, Red Bear at his shoulder. "How many?" Red Bear asked. "Can't tell yet. More than yesterday." "More than we can handle." "Probably." "Good. I was getting bored." Despite everything, Ezra almost smiled. The riders came into view, 8 of them. The Hollister brothers in front, followed by Sheriff Tucker and a man in a federal marshal's coat. Behind them rode 4 more men, deputized townspeople, by the look of them armed and nervous, and following orders they didn't quite understand. And in the center of it all, mounted on a black horse that gleamed like polished coal, sat Deacon Cyrus Blackwood. He was exactly as Sadie had described, soft in the middle, clean-shaved, hands that had never done honest work, eyes like chips of blue ice, empty and cold and hungry. He smiled when he saw Ezra on the porch. "Mr. McAllister, what a pleasure to finally meet you." "Can't say the feeling's mutual." "No, I don't suppose it is." Blackwood dismounted with practiced grace. "I believe you have something that belongs to me. I don't have nothing of yours. The girl, Mr. McAllister, Ruth Ann Brennan, my legal ward." He produced a folded paper from inside his coat. "I have documentation, signed by her mother before she passed, witnessed by the church, filed with the county. Her name is Sadie, and she ain't going anywhere with you." Blackwood's smile didn't waver. "I'm afraid you don't have a choice in the matter. Marshal Briggs." The federal man stepped forward. He was exactly as Red Bear had described, hard-faced by the book, the kind of lawman who followed the letter of the law even when the spirit of it screamed otherwise. "Mr. McAllister, I've been asked to serve as an impartial arbiter in this custody dispute. I've reviewed the documents. They appear to be in order." "Documents can lie." "Perhaps. But the law deals in documents, not feelings. Briggs's voice was flat professional. If you have counter-documentation proof of a competing claim, I'm willing to review it. Otherwise, I'll have to enforce the existing custody arrangement. What about the bruises, the broken bones, the fact that she ran 15 miles in a blizzard to get away from that man? Children run away for many reasons. It doesn't prove abuse. Look at her throat. Look at the finger marks. I've seen children hurt themselves in more creative ways than you can imagine, without corroborating evidence. I have corroborating evidence. Ezra's voice cut through the cold air. Medical reports, letters, proof that Sadie's grandmother was my wife, which makes her kin by marriage. Blackwood's smile flickered, just for a moment. Kin by marriage isn't a legal custody claim. Maybe not, but it's enough to get a judge involved, a real judge, not a county clerk in your pocket. Mr. McAllister. Blackwood stepped closer, his voice dropping to something soft and dangerous. I understand your attachment to the child. A lonely man, a big empty house, a vulnerable little girl showing up on your doorstep. Some might see how that situation could develop in unfortunate directions. Red Bear's hand moved toward his weapon. Ezra held up a hand to stop him. You want to say that clearer, Deacon? I'm merely observing that appearances matter, and the appearance of a reclusive millionaire taking in a young female runaway, well, people talk. People are talking about you too, about children who come back from your house with broken bones, about cellars that lock from the outside, about a man who prays loud so nobody hears the screaming. Blackwood's face went hard. The mask of piety slipped, and for just a moment, Ezra saw what lived underneath. Lies, the deacon said, spread by a troubled child with a history of fabrication. Then you won't mind if Marshal Briggs takes a look at your cellar, at your discipline methods, at the other children in your care. I most certainly would mind. My home is not subject to inspection based on the accusations of a known liar. Then we got a problem, because I ain't handing her over without a fight. The two men stared at each other across the frozen ground. The wind picked up, throwing snow between them like a curtain. Marshal Briggs cleared his throat. Mr. McAllister, I'm going to ask you one more time to produce the child. If you refuse, I'll have no choice but to treat this as obstruction of a legal custody order. You do what you got to do, Marshal. So will I. Ezra. Sheriff Tucker spoke for the first time, his voice tired and unhappy. Don't make this harder than it has to be. It's already hard, Tom. Been hard since that girl crawled through my window half dead. Been hard since I saw what that man did to her. Only thing that's gonna make it easy is if you open your eyes and see what's right in front of you. I see a legal document. I see a man of God claiming his rightful ward. You see what you want to see, what's easy to see, what lets you sleep at night. Tucker flinched. His hand went to his holster, then dropped away. I ain't got a choice, Ezra. Everybody's got a choice. You're just too scared to make the right one. The front door opened behind him. Sadie stepped onto the porch. She was wearing one of Martha's old dresses, taken in at the waist with pins and hope. Her hair was brushed and braided. Her feet were still bandaged but steady. She looked at Blackwood, and she didn't flinch. I ain't going with you. Blackwood's smile returned wider and colder than before. Sadie, my dear, you've caused quite a bit of trouble, haven't you? Don't call me that. Don't call me dear. Don't call me nothing. This defiance is exactly what I've been working to correct. The sin of pride, child. The sin of rebellion against God's ordained authority. You ain't God's authority. You ain't nothing but a man who hurts children and calls it holy. Blackwood's face darkened. You see, Marshal? You see what I've been dealing with? This willful disobedience, this... I see a child, Marshal Briggs said slowly, speaking her mind. A child who has been manipulated by Mr. McAllister, filled with lies and false accusations. Then let her speak for herself. The marshal turned to Sadie. Girl, I need you to tell me the truth. Has this man hurt you? Sadie's hands curled into fists at her sides. Yes. How? He locks me in the cellar when I sin. Sometimes for days. He uses his belt when I talk back. He broke my ribs when I tried to run the first time. Her voice stayed steady, but Ezra could see her trembling. He prays while he does it. Says he's saving my soul. These are lies, Blackwood said smoothly. The fantasies of a disturbed child. Then show them the cellar, Sadie said. Show them the lock on the outside of the door. Show them where the blood stained the floor when Sarah Mitchell cut her wrists trying to get out. The name landed like a thunderclap. Earl Hollister's horse shifted uneasily. One of the deputized men made a sound low in his throat. Sarah Mitchell, Marshal Briggs said carefully. Who is that? One of the other children. The deacon's other wards. Sadie's voice cracked. She died last winter. He said it was consumption, said she was weak, but I heard her crying the night before. Heard her begging him to stop. This is outrageous. Blackwood's composure was cracking now, real anger bleeding through. I will not stand here and be accused of— Then don't stand here. Ezra stepped forward, placing himself between Blackwood and Sadie. Ride back to town, face an investigation, open your house to inspection. If you've got nothing to hide, you got nothing to fear. I have everything to fear from liars and manipulators. Then prove us wrong. The silence stretched, the wind died, the snow hung suspended in the air like frozen breath. Marshal Briggs looked at Blackwood, then at Sadie, then at the medical report Ezra was holding out. I'll need to see that documentation, Mr. McAllister. Take it. Take all of it. Letters from my wife proving Sadie's blood connection to this family. Medical reports showing injuries consistent with abuse. Everything. Blackwood's face went white. Marshal, you can't seriously— I can, and I will. Briggs took the papers, began reading. His expression changed as he worked through them. These letters. They indicate Mrs. McAllister had a daughter before her marriage. A daughter who would be Sadie's grandmother, Ezra finished. Martha's blood runs in that girl's veins, and Martha's ghost is screaming for someone to protect her. Ghosts. Blackwood laughed, but it came out wrong, too high, too sharp. We're dealing in ghosts now, Marshal. This is absurd. I have legal documentation, proper witnessed filed documentation. And I have a dead child named Sarah Mitchell who deserves justice, Sadie said quietly. And 3 more children in that house right now who are too scared to run like I did, and a cellar with a lock on the outside and blood on the floor. She's lying. Then prove it. Marshal Briggs's voice had gone cold. Open your house to inspection. Show me this cellar that doesn't exist. Produce these other children who will surely contradict everything this girl has said. The other children are at school. The cellar is being used for storage. This is not the time for— There's never a good time for the truth, is there, Deacon? Briggs folded the papers and tucked them inside his coat. I'm not making any custody decisions today. Not until I've had time to review this evidence and conduct my own investigation. This is outrageous. I have rights, legal rights. You have the right to due process. So does this child. Briggs turned to Ezra. Mr. McAllister, I'm placing Sadie in your temporary custody, pending the outcome of my investigation. You will make her available for questioning if needed. You will not attempt to leave the territory. Understood. Marshal. Blackwood's voice had gone shrill. You cannot do this. The law clearly states. The law states that the welfare of the child is paramount, and right now I'm not convinced that welfare is best served by returning her to your custody. Briggs mounted his horse. We'll be in touch. He rode away. One by one, the other riders followed until only the Hollister brothers and Blackwood remained. Blackwood stared at Ezra with naked hatred. This isn't over. No, it ain't. You've made a powerful enemy today, Mr. McAllister. The church has resources, connections, patience. So do I. We'll see. Blackwood turned his horse. "We'll see who's left standing when this is done." He rode away. The Hollister brothers followed, casting dark looks over their shoulders. Ezra watched them go, until they were nothing but specks against the white. Then his legs gave out, and he had to grab the porch rail to keep from falling. "Ezra." Sadie was beside him instantly, her small hands on his arm. "Are you all right?" "Fine, just—" He took a deep breath. "Just been a while since I stood up to anyone like that. You were amazing. You were—" I was scared out of my mind. He looked down at her. "But I wasn't gonna let them take you. Not ever." She threw her arms around him. He held on, feeling her heart beat against his chest, feeling her tears soak through his shirt. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for believing me. Always, Sadie. Always." Red Bear appeared in the doorway. "That was closer than I'd like." "Too close," Ezra agreed. "Blackwood ain't gonna let this go. Marshall bought us time, but time runs out." "I know. What's the plan?" Ezra looked at the road where his enemies had disappeared. At the snow still falling. At the copper weather vane turning slowly in the wind. "We use the time we got, find witnesses, build a case, make it impossible for anyone to look the other way. And if that don't work, then we do what we have to do." He straightened up, steadied himself. "But first, we need to talk. All of us. About Martha. About the past. About everything I should have told you both days ago." They went inside. The fire was low. Ezra built it back up while Sadie made coffee, and Red Bear took his usual place by the window watching. When they were all settled, Ezra began to talk. He told them about Martha, about meeting her in Cheyenne 25 years ago, falling in love with her smile, marrying her within 3 months. He told them about building this ranch together, about the good years and the hard years, about Grace's birth and the joy that came with it. He told them about Grace's death. "I wasn't there," he said, voice rough. "I've told you that, but what I didn't tell you is what happened after. How Martha waited for me to grieve with her. How I couldn't. How I locked myself up instead, built walls, shut everything out." Sadie listened without interrupting. Her face was solemn, old beyond her years. "She left because of me," Ezra continued. "Not because of Grace. Because I turned to stone when she needed me soft. Because I let her bury our daughter alone and then acted like burying my feelings was the same thing." "Where did she go?" Sadie asked quietly. "Cheyenne first. Then Bozeman. She died in a boarding house there 3 years ago. Alone. Waiting for me to come find her. You didn't know." "Red Bear knew. She made him promise not to tell me." He looked at his old friend. "Said if I hadn't come by then, I wasn't coming." Red Bear's face was carved from stillness. He didn't speak. "I should have come," Ezra said. "Should have swallowed my pride, broken down my walls, gone after her. But I was too scared. Too stubborn. Too convinced that feeling nothing was better than feeling everything." Sadie reached across the table and put her hand on his. "She forgave you." "You don't know that." "I do." She squeezed his fingers. "Mama told me. Before she died. She said her mama, your Martha, sent a letter, years ago. Said she was sorry for leaving. Said she understood why you shut down. Said she hoped someday you'd find your way back to the light." Ezra's breath caught in his throat. "She wrote that?" "Mama kept the letter. Read it to me sometimes when she was missing her own mama." Sadie's eyes glistened. "That's why she sent me here. Not to collect a debt. To give you a chance to do what Martha wanted. To come back to the light." The room went quiet except for the crackle of the fire and the moan of the wind outside. Ezra put his head in his hands. "I don't deserve this," he said. "Don't deserve forgiveness. Don't deserve you." "Maybe not." Sadie's voice was gentle. "But that's what grace is, ain't it? Getting what you don't deserve. Mama taught me that." Red Bear spoke from the window. "She's right. Grace ain't about deserving. Never was. Ezra looked up. His old friend's face was different now, softer somehow, the granite giving way to something almost like tenderness. "You've been carrying this alone for 18 years, Red Bear said. "Martha's leaving, Grace's death, your own guilt eating you from the inside, but you don't have to carry it alone anymore. I don't know how to do anything else." "Then learn." Red Bear crossed to the table and sat down across from him. "That girl didn't come here by accident. Martha's letters didn't survive by accident. None of this is accident, it's purpose. And you can either accept it or keep drowning in your own stubbornness until there's nothing left." Right. Ezra stared at him. This man who'd been his brother for 30 years, who'd watched him build an empire and watched it turn into a prison, who'd kept Martha's secrets because she asked him to and lived with the weight of them ever since. "You should have told me," Ezra said. "When she died, you should have told me." "Would you have heard it?" "I don't know." "Then that's why I didn't tell you, because I don't know ain't good enough when someone's dying." Red Bear's voice dropped. "I've made my own mistakes, Ezra. Kept my own secrets. Watched my own people suffer because I was too scared to speak up. I ain't got no right to judge you." "But you're judging me anyway." "No, I'm telling you the truth, which is different." He leaned forward. "The truth is, you got a chance right now. A chance to be the man Martha believed you could be. The man Grace would have wanted for a father. The man Sadie needs you to be. And if I fail, then you fail. But at least you tried, which is more than you've done in 18 years. The fire popped. A log shifted, sending sparks up the chimney. Ezra looked at Sadie. At this child who'd appeared at his window like an answer to a prayer he'd never said. At Martha's eyes looking back at him from a face full of hope. "I'll try," he said. "That's all I can promise. I'll try." Sadie's smile broke through her tears like sun through storm clouds. "That's all anyone can ask." The moment shattered with the sound of breaking glass. Ezra was on his feet before the echo-dyed rifle in his hand's body between Sadie and the window. Red Bear had his weapon drawn, moving toward the door. "Stay down," Ezra commanded. Another crash. Something came through the broken window, a burning bundle trailing smoke and flame. "Fire!" Red Bear grabbed the burning mass and threw it back outside before the flames could spread. His hands came away blackened. More crashes, more fire. 3 bundles, 4 arcing through windows and landing on dry floorboards. "They're trying to burn us out," Sadie screamed. Ezra's mind raced. The Hollisters had to be. Come back after the marshal left, come back to finish what legal means couldn't. "Back door," he said. "Now." They ran. Smoke was filling the house thick and choking. Ezra grabbed Sadie's hand and pulled her through the kitchen past the pantry toward the door that led outside. He kicked it open. Earl Hollister stood there with a shotgun. "Going somewhere, McAllister." Ezra pushed Sadie behind him. "Let her go. This is between us." "Nah, I don't think so. See, the deacon's real upset about how things went today. Real upset. And he asked me to send a message." "What kind of message?" Earl's smile was ugly as sin. "The kind that makes sure nobody else thinks about crossing him." He raised the shotgun. Red Bear came through a side window Ezra didn't even know was there. He hit Earl from the side, driving him into the snow, and the shotgun went off into the air, a boom that echoed across the valley. "Run!" Red Bear shouted. "Get her out of here. I ain't leaving you. You ain't got a choice." Red Bear was grappling with Earl on the ground. Old bones against young muscle, fury against fury. Take the girl and go. Wade Hollister came around the corner of the house. 2 more men behind him. They saw Ezra and Sadie standing in the doorway. There. Ezra grabbed Sadie and ran. He didn't know where he was going, just away. Into the snow, into the dark, away from the flames and the shouting and the sound of Red Bear fighting for his life. Sadie kept up with him, her small legs pumping her breath coming in gasps. They crashed through the fence line, stumbled down the slope toward the creek, plunged into the icy water, and came out the other side, soaked and freezing. "Keep moving," Ezra panted. "Don't stop." Red Bear. "He can take care of himself." "But," I said, "keep moving." They ran until Ezra's lungs burned and his legs screamed, and Sadie collapsed in the snow, unable to take another step. He pulled her up, wrapped his coat around her shaking shoulders, held her against his chest. "It's all right. You're all right. I've got you." "They burned your house," she sobbed. "They burned everything." "Don't matter. It's all you had. Martha's things, Grace's room, everything." "No." He tilted her chin up, forced her to look at him. "Not everything. I've got you. That's what matters." "But Red Bear survived worse than a couple of Hollister boys. He'll find us." "What if he doesn't?" Ezra didn't have an answer for that. Didn't have an answer for any of it. His house was burning. His friend was fighting alone. His enemies were hunting them through the snow. And all he could do was hold on to this girl and pray that somehow, some way, it would be enough. "We need to keep moving," he said. "Can you walk?" Sadie nodded weakly. "I think so." "Good. There's a line shack about 3 miles north. We can shelter there, wait for morning." "Then what?" Ezra looked back toward the ranch. The glow of flames lit up the sky, orange and angry against the black. "Then we finish this." They walked through the night, 2 figures stumbling through the white leaving tracks that the snow slowly filled behind them. And somewhere in the dark, a 3rd figure followed. The line shack materialized out of the darkness like a prayer answered. Ezra pushed open the door with his shoulder, half carrying Sadie across the threshold. She was shaking so hard her teeth rattled. Hypothermia setting in. He needed to get her warm, needed to get her dry. Needed to do something besides stand in the dark, feeling helpless. "Stay here," he said. "I'm gonna find something to burn. Don't leave me." "I ain't leaving, just looking for wood." He fumbled in the darkness, found an old lamp, matches beside it. The flame caught, throwing weak yellow light across the small space. There was a stove in the corner, a pile of split logs beside it, a cot with a moth-eaten blanket. It wasn't much. It was enough. He got the fire going while Sadie huddled against the wall, her wet clothes steaming slightly in the growing warmth. Her eyes were too big in her pale face, shock and fear, and something else he couldn't name. "You're gonna be all right," he said. "Hear me. You're gonna be all right. Red Bear is tougher than a $2 steak. He'll find us." "You don't know that." "I know him. 30 years. Man's been through worse than a couple of Hollister boys." Sadie didn't look convinced. Truth was, Ezra wasn't either. But he couldn't let her see that. Couldn't let her feel the fear gnawing at his own chest. "Get out of those wet clothes," he said. "Wrap yourself in that blanket. I'll keep watch." She nodded, too cold to argue. He turned his back while she changed, staring at the door, listening to the wind howl outside like something hungry. His house was burning. Everything he had left of Martha, of Grace, of the life he'd built and lost, all of it turning to ash. The letters, the photographs, the porcelain doll with the painted smile. Gone. All of it gone. "Ezra!" He turned. Sadie was wrapped in the blanket, her wet dress puddled on the floor. She looked small, fragile, breakable in ways he couldn't fix. "Yeah, I'm sorry." "For what?" "For coming here. For bringing all this trouble to your door. If I just stayed with the deacon, none of this would have—" "Stop!" His voice came out sharper than he intended. "Don't you ever say that. Don't you ever think that." "But it's true." "It ain't true. What's true is a man of God was hurting you and you had the courage to run. What's true is your mama sent you to find me because she believed I could help. What's true is—" His voice cracked. "What's true is I was dying in that big house. Dying slow every day, surrounded by ghosts I was too scared to face. And you came through my window and made me remember what living felt like." Sadie stared at him. In the firelight, her eyes glistened. "You mean that?" "Every word." She crossed the distance between them and threw her arms around his waist, face pressed against his chest. He held her, this broken child who'd somehow become the most important thing in his world. "I won't let them take you," he whispered. "Not Blackwood, not the Hollisters, not anyone. You hear me? I hear you." "Good. Now get some sleep. I'll watch." "You need sleep too. I've gone longer without." She didn't argue, just climbed onto the cot and curled up under the blanket facing the fire. Within minutes, her breathing slowed. Ezra sat by the door rifle across his knees and waited. The sound came around midnight. Footsteps in the snow, slow, deliberate, moving toward the shack. Ezra raised his rifle, sighted on the door. His finger found the trigger. "Come any closer and I drop you." "Then I reckon you'd better aim better than that." The voice was familiar, rough as gravel, tired as death. "Red Bear. Who else would be fool enough to walk 3 miles in a blizzard to find your sorry hide?" Ezra threw open the door. Red Bear stood there, battered and bloody, one arm hanging at a bad angle, but alive. Alive. "Get in here." Ezra grabbed his good arm and pulled him inside. "What happened?" "Hollister boys happened. 4 of them all together. They wanted to make sure no one survived." "And?" Red Bear's mouth twitched. "They underestimated me." "How bad are you hurt?" "Shoulders dislocated. Couple ribs may be cracked. Nothing fatal." He looked toward the cot where Sadie was sitting up, eyes wide. "She all right?" "She's fine. Scared, but fine." "Good." Red Bear sank onto the floor, his back against the wall. "Because we got bigger problems than my shoulder." "Bigger how?" "I circled back after I lost them, went to see what was left of the house." Red Bear's face was grim. "It's gone, Ezra. All of it. Burned to the foundation." Ezra had known, had seen the flames against the sky, but hearing it spoken made it real in a way watching couldn't. "The letters," he said. "Martha's letters. Marshal Briggs has copies. You gave them to him this morning. But the originals are ashes now." Red Bear met his eyes. "I'm sorry." Ezra nodded, couldn't speak. His throat had closed around something jagged. Sadie climbed off the cot and crossed to where Red Bear sat. Without a word, she knelt beside him and started examining his dislocated shoulder. "This is gonna hurt," she said. "Most things do. Brace yourself." She did something with her hands, quick and practiced, and there was a pop, a grunt of pain, and Red Bear's shoulder was back in place. "Where'd you learn to do that?" Ezra asked. "The deacon dislocated my shoulder once. I learned how to fix it myself." Her voice was flat. Couldn't exactly ask him for help. The rage came back hotter than before. Ezra's hands curled into fists. "That man is going to pay for what he's done. Burning your house might have been his mistake." Red Bear flexed his shoulder, testing it. "Arson's a crime even crooked sheriffs can't ignore. And if I killed one of the Hollister boys, you killed one, Earl. He was going to shoot you in the back. I did what I had to. Self-defense. That's what I'll tell the marshal. Question is, will he believe it?" Sadie spoke up. "He'll believe it if we can prove Blackwood ordered the attack. If we can show he's been behind everything." "And how do we prove that the other children?" Her voice was steady. "The ones still in his house. If we can get them to talk. Blackwood will have moved them by now, hidden them, or scared them into silence. Then we find another way." Sadie stood up, her face set. "There has to be evidence, letters, records, something he's written down. Men like him, they keep track of things. They like having power, and power means knowing things nobody else knows." Red Bear looked at Ezra. "She's got a point." "I know she does." Ezra was thinking now, his mind working through the problem. "Blackwood's been in Wind River, 6 years? Built up his church, his connections, his wall of respectable citizens. That takes planning, documentation. His office at the church, Red Bear said. He keeps it locked. Never lets anyone in there. Then that's where we go. Breaking into a church, that's a hanging offense. So is burning a man's house down with him inside. So is beating children until their bones break. Ezra's voice was cold. If we're gonna hang, I'd rather hang for trying to stop a monster than for standing by and letting him win. Sadie moved to his side. I know where he keeps the key. Saw him hide it once when he thought I wasn't looking. You sure? I'm sure. Then we wait for morning. Move when there's light enough to see. Red Bear shook his head. Morning's too late. Blackwood knows we're alive. He'll be expecting us to do something. He'll be ready. So we move now. We move now. They left the line shack an hour before dawn. The snow had stopped falling, and the sky was clearing, stars appearing one by one like holes poked in black velvet. The cold was bitter, deep-bone cold that made breathing hurt, but they pushed through it. Red Bear led the way, his tracking instincts finding paths through the drifts that a white man would have missed. Sadie followed wrapped in Ezra's coat, her face pale but determined. Ezra brought up the rear, watching their backs jumping at every shadow. They came into town from the north, avoiding the main road. The church stood at the edge of the settlement, its white clapboards gleaming faintly in the starlight. No lamps burned inside. No sound but the wind. There, Sadie whispered, pointing. The window by the back door. That's his office. Where's the key? Third stone from the left in the foundation. He built a little hollow behind it. Red Bear went to look. Came back with a rusted iron key in his hand. She's right. I'm always right, Sadie said. People just don't listen. Despite everything, Ezra almost smiled. They entered through the back door, moving quiet as ghosts. The church was empty pews, standing in silent rows, the altar dark and cold. Blackwood's office was at the rear behind a heavy oak door. The key turned in the lock with a sound that seemed too loud in the stillness. Inside the office was neat as a pin. Desk polished. Books arranged by height. Papers stacked in precise piles. Everything in its place, everything controlled. Start looking, Ezra said. Ezra. Anything with names, dates, money. Anything that shows what he really is. They searched. Drawers were emptied, files opened, ledgers examined. Sadie knew where to look, knew the hiding places men like Blackwood favored, the secrets they kept in plain sight. Here. Her voice was sharp. Look at this. She held up a leather-bound journal. Inside, in Blackwood's precise handwriting, were lists. Names, dates, amounts, children taken in, children relocated, children who had died and been buried in unmarked graves. Sarah Mitchell, the girl Sadie had mentioned, died February 3, 1882. Cause weakness of spirit. There are more, Sadie said, her voice shaking. Thomas Brennan, Mary Sullivan, James O'Connor. She looked up at Ezra, tears streaming down her face. He kept track of them, like cattle, like property. God help us, Red Bear breathed. God ain't got nothing to do with this. Ezra took the journal from her hands. This is enough. This is more than enough. It's evidence, Red Bear said. Real evidence. Marshal Briggs can't ignore this. Then we take it to him. Now. Tonight. They turned to leave. Cyrus Blackwood stood in the doorway. He wasn't alone. Wade Hollister flanked him on one side, Sheriff Tucker on the other. 3 more men waited behind them, all armed, all wearing expressions of grim satisfaction. Mr. McAllister. Blackwood's smile was wide and warm and utterly empty. I was hoping you'd come. You knew. I suspected. A man like you, stubborn, proud, convinced of his own righteousness, was never going to surrender quietly. I simply waited for you to make the predictable move. Ezra's hand moved toward his rifle. Wade Hollister raised his shotgun. I wouldn't, not unless you want the girl to watch you die. Ezra froze. That's better. Blackwood stepped into the office, picking his way around the scattered papers with distaste. I see you've been reading my private records. How unfortunate. Unfortunate for you. This journal proves everything. Does it prove what exactly? That I kept detailed records of the children in my care, that some of them tragically passed away from illness or accident. Blackwood shook his head. The courts will see a man who loved too much, who tried too hard, who was betrayed by a troubled child and her deluded protector. Courts don't matter when the truth comes out. The truth. Blackwood laughed softly. The truth is whatever I say it is. I am a man of God. You are a hermit who took in a runaway girl under suspicious circumstances. Your word against mine. He picked up the journal, leafed through it casually. And this disappears. As do you. Marshal Briggs is dealing with the remains of your burned house and the body of Earl Hollister. By the time he realizes you're missing, you'll be at the bottom of the Wind River with stones in your pockets. Sadie stepped forward. Her voice was calm, far calmer than it should have been. You're gonna kill us in a church. God's house is everywhere, child, and sometimes the Lord's work requires sacrifice. Blackwood looked at her with something that might have been affection if there had been anything human behind it. I'll miss you, Sadie. You were always my favorite. So much spirit, so much defiance to break. You didn't break me. Not yet, but I would have. He turned to Wade Hollister. Take them out the back, make it quiet, make it clean, and make sure no one finds them until spring. Wade stepped forward with rope in his hands. Red Bear moved. He was old and hurt, but he was still fast, still dangerous. Still a warrior born of a people who'd fought for their land long before white men came to take it. He hit Wade low, driving him backward, and the shotgun went off into the ceiling, raining splinters down on everyone. Run! Red Bear shouted. Get her out! Ezra grabbed Sadie's hand and pulled. They dove through the office window glass, shattering around them, and hit the snow rolling. Behind them, the sounds of fighting, of shouting, of a struggle that couldn't last. Red Bear. He told us to run. They ran. Into the dark, into the cold, into the only sanctuary Ezra could think of. The cemetery. Grace's grave sat on the hill, just as it always had, a gray stone against the white snow. Ezra collapsed beside it, lungs burning, heart pounding. Sadie fell beside him, her hand still gripping his. Why here? She gasped. Because they won't think to look. He pressed his palm against the cold granite. Because I need to. He couldn't finish, couldn't find the words. But Sadie seemed to understand. She sat back on her heels and let him have his moment. Grace, Ezra whispered, I know you can't hear me. I know you're gone, and have been gone for 18 years. And nothing I say is going to change that. But I need you to know something. The wind stirred the snow. The stars burned cold above. I'm sorry I wasn't there. I'm sorry I let your mama grieve alone. I'm sorry I turned to stone when I should have broken open. His voice cracked. But there's a girl here, Grace. A girl who needs me. A girl your mama's blood runs through, even though we didn't know it. And I can't let her down the way I let you down. Sadie reached over and put her hand on his arm. I don't know what's going to happen tonight. Ezra continued. Don't know if we're going to make it out of this alive. But I want you to know, I want you and your mama both to know that I finally woke up. Finally remembered how to feel. Finally understood what matters. He looked at Sadie. At those honey-brown eyes, so like Martha's, shining with tears in the starlight. She matters, and I'm gonna fight for her, even if it kills me. Sadie's chin trembled. Ezra. Hush, let me finish. He turned back to the grave. Grace, if there's any way you can help us, any way you can watch over us, I'm asking. Your daddy's asking. Not for me, for her, for Sadie. The wind died. The snow settled. And in the silence, Ezra could have sworn he heard something. A sound like distant bells. A sound like a child laughing. A sound like forgiveness. "Okay," he said, his voice steadier now. "Okay, let's go." "Go where?" "Back to town. Back to finish this." "Blackwood will kill us." "Maybe. But running ain't gonna save us either. Only way out is through." He helped her to her feet. "You ready?" Sadie looked at the grave, then at him, then at the lights of town in the distance. "I'm ready." They walked down the hill together. The town was stirring when they reached the main street. Word had spread: the fire at McAllister's ranch, the fight at the church, the chaos and violence of the night. People stood in doorways, watching, whispering, waiting to see what would happen next. Ezra walked straight down the center of the street, Sadie at his side. He didn't hurry, didn't hide. Let them see him coming. Marshal Briggs met them in front of the jail. "McAllister, I've been looking for you." "I'm right here." "There's a dead man at the church. 2 more beaten unconscious. And Deacon Blackwood is claiming you attacked him without provocation." "That's a lie. He's a man of God. He's a monster." Ezra reached into his coat and pulled out the leather journal. "This is proof. His own handwriting. Names of children he's killed. Dates, details, everything." Briggs took the journal. His face was impossible to read as he leafed through the pages. "Where did you get this?" "His office, where he was planning to kill us and dump our bodies in the river." "That's a serious accusation." "It's the truth." Briggs was quiet for a long moment. The crowd was gathering now, townspeople emerging from their homes, drawn by the commotion. Among them, Ezra spotted faces he recognized. Doc Carver, pale and anxious. Widow McGregor from the general store. Pastor Jennings from the Methodist church. And there, pushing through the crowd, came Cyrus Blackwood himself. "Marshal, thank God you've apprehended this madman. He broke into my office, assaulted my associates, and stole private church documents. Private documents that catalog the murder of children." Blackwood's smile flickered. "I don't know what you mean." "This journal, Deacon. Names, dates, children who died in your care buried in unmarked graves." Briggs held up the book. "You want to explain this?" Those are private records. Medical histories. Personal notes on troubled children who sadly succumbed to illness or accident. Sarah Mitchell, died February 3, 1882. Cause weakness of spirit. Briggs's voice was cold. "That sound like a medical history to you?" The crowd stirred. Whispers spread like ripples in a pond. "This is absurd." Blackwood's composure was cracking now, real panic showing through. "You're taking the word of a known liar and a recluse over a man of God. I'm taking the word of evidence. And this evidence says you've been abusing and killing children for years. I demand a lawyer. I demand my rights as a citizen. You'll get your rights. In a courtroom, where a jury can see exactly what kind of man you are." Briggs turned to his deputies. "Take him into custody." "No!" Blackwood lunged forward, his hand reaching for something inside his coat. "I will not be judged by the likes of—" The gunshot echoed off the buildings. Blackwood staggered, clutching his arm. Blood seeped through his fingers. He looked down at the wound, then up at the person who'd fired. Sheriff Tucker stood with his pistol smoking, his face twisted with something like grief and relief combined. "I should have done that years ago," Tucker said quietly. "God forgive me for waiting so long." Blackwood crumpled to his knees in the snow. His eyes found Sadie, and for the first time there was fear in them. Real fear. "You," he hissed. "You did this. You ruined everything." Sadie walked forward until she stood over him. This man who'd beaten her, starved her, locked her in the dark. This man who'd broken her bones and called it salvation. "No," she said. "You ruined yourself. The day you first raised your hand to a child, you started digging your own grave. I just helped you finish it." Blackwood's face contorted with rage. "You'll burn in hell for this. You'll—" Maybe I will. Sadie's voice was steady. But you're going first. The deputies dragged him away. Ezra pulled Sadie into his arms and held her while she cried. Around them, the town watched in stunned silence. The sun was rising now, painting the snow gold and pink, and somewhere in the distance, a church bell began to ring. Not Blackwood's church, another one. The old Presbyterian chapel on the edge of town, abandoned for years, its bell silent since the congregation moved away. But it was ringing now. "Who's doing that?" someone asked. No one knew. No one could explain. Ezra looked up at the sound, at the golden light spreading across the valley, at the world made new by dawn and truth and sacrifice. He thought of Grace, of Martha, of all the years he'd wasted behind walls of his own making. And he thought of Sadie, this girl who'd come through his window like an answer to a prayer, who'd reminded him how to feel, who'd given him something worth fighting for. "Let's go find Red Bear," he said. "Make sure he's all right. And then we go home." Sadie looked up at him. "Home? But your house." "Houses can be rebuilt. Land's still there. Foundation's still good." He squeezed her shoulder. "And home ain't about buildings anyway. Home's about people. People you love. People who love you back." Her face crumpled into something between tears and laughter. "Is that what this is? Love? I reckon it might be." "Then I reckon I can live with that." They walked toward the church, toward Red Bear, toward whatever came next. Behind them, the bell kept ringing. And high on the hill where Grace's grave stood watch over the valley, the morning light fell on the granite stone like a blessing, like a promise kept, like grace. They found Red Bear in the church basement, tied to a support beam with blood crusted on his face. "About time," he said when Ezra cut the ropes. "I was starting to think you'd forgotten about me." "Never." "Liar." Red Bear tried to stand, stumbled. Ezra caught him. "How bad is it, Blackwood?" "In custody. Marshall's got him." "Good. That man needed killing, but I reckon justice works too." Sadie pressed a clean cloth to the gash on his forehead. Her hands were steady despite everything, and Red Bear watched her work with something like pride in his eyes. "You did good tonight, girl." "I was scared the whole time." "That's what brave is, being scared and doing it anyway." Doc Carver appeared in the doorway, medical bag in hand. He looked older than he had yesterday, worn down by guilt and sleepless nights. "I heard what happened. Came to help." Red Bear eyed him warily. "You got a lot of nerve showing up here." "I know, but I'm done being a coward." Doc Carver knelt beside them and started examining Red Bear's injuries with professional efficiency. "Broken nose, couple cracked ribs, concussion probably. You're lucky they didn't kill you." "Wasn't luck. Was too mean to die." Despite everything, Ezra felt something loosen in his chest. Red Bear was alive. Sadie was safe. Blackwood was finished. They'd survived. The question was, what came next? Marshal Briggs found them an hour later. His face was grim, his movements deliberate, and Ezra knew before he spoke that the fight wasn't over yet. "McAllister, we need to talk." About the custody situation. About Blackwood's allegations. About the fact that you broke into his office and stole private documents. Those documents prove he kept records. Whether those records constitute evidence of criminal activity is for a judge to decide. Briggs pulled out a folded paper. "This is a temporary custody order. Until the courts sort this out, Sadie remains in protective custody of the territory." Ezra's blood went cold. "What does that mean?" "It means she goes to the territorial orphanage in Cheyenne, pending investigation." "No." Sadie's voice was small but fierce. "I ain't going to no orphanage. It's for your own protection." "Protection from what?" "The only person who ever hurt me is in your jail. There are procedures, miss. Rules that have to be followed." "Rules." Ezra stepped forward. "Same rules that let Blackwood hurt children for 6 years. Same rules that said a child's word don't matter against a deacon's. I understand your frustration. No, you don't. You don't understand nothing. That girl came to me for help. Her grandmother was my wife. That makes her blood, makes her kin, makes her mine. Briggs's expression didn't change. Blood ties without legal documentation don't establish custody. You'll need to file formal adoption papers. Go through the courts. Prove you're a fit guardian. How long? Could be months. Could be longer. Briggs looked at Sadie, and for the first time something like sympathy crossed his face. I'm sorry, miss. I know this ain't what you want, but the law is the law. Sadie's hands curled into fists. The law is broken. Maybe, but it's all we got. He reached for her arm. She jerked back, pressing against Ezra's side. Please, she whispered. Don't make me go. I'll be good. I'll work hard. I won't cause no trouble. Just don't make me go back to being nobody's. The words broke something in Ezra's chest. He pulled her against him, wrapped his arms around her small frame. Marshall, there has to be another way. There isn't. Not unless... Briggs stopped. His eyes went to someone standing in the church doorway. Unless what? Sheriff Tucker stepped forward. His face was haggard, his hands shaking slightly, but his voice was steady. Unless I testify about what I saw, what I knew, what I should have stopped years ago. The room went quiet. Tom, Briggs said carefully. What are you talking about? I'm talking about truth. Real truth, not the watered-down version we've been selling. Tucker turned to face the small crowd that had gathered. I knew Blackwood was hurting those children. Knew it for 3 years. Saw the bruises. Heard the screams from his cellar. Did nothing because he had dirt on me, had money I owed, had ways of making my life difficult. Doc Carver spoke up. Same here. I treated broken bones, set ribs, stitched cuts, wrote accidental injury on every report because I was scared of losing my practice. And I sold him supplies, Widow McGregor said, her voice trembling. Chains, locks, things no decent person needs. I told myself it wasn't my business. Told myself I was imagining things. One by one, townspeople stepped forward. Pastor Jennings admitted he'd heard confession from children about abuse and did nothing. The Jensen brothers confessed they'd helped Blackwood chase down runaways for money. Each confession was a stone laid on the foundation of truth, building something that couldn't be ignored. Marshal Briggs listened to it all. His face grew darker with each testimony, and when the last person finished speaking, he turned to Ezra. This changes things. How? Blackwood's going to trial. Real trial, territorial court, no local interference. And with this many witnesses, he looked at Sadie. You'll have to testify. Tell them everything. Can you do that? Sadie lifted her chin. Yes, sir. It won't be easy. Defense lawyers will try to discredit you, call you a liar, bring up every mistake you ever made. Let them try. I got the truth. That's more than they got. Briggs nodded slowly. Then he tore up the custody order. Until the trial, you stay with McAllister. But Ezra? His voice went hard. You keep her safe. Keep her available for questioning. And start those adoption papers. Because if this goes sideways, I can't protect you from the law. Understood. Good. Briggs turned to leave, then stopped. For what it's worth, you did right. Taking her in. Fighting for her. Martha would have been proud. He walked away. The crowd dispersed slowly, people avoiding each other's eyes, ashamed of their silence, grateful it was finally broken. Ezra looked down at Sadie. You ready to go home? What home? Your house burned down. Then we'll build a new one, better than before. How you lost everything? No. He touched her face gently. I found everything that matters. The rest is just wood and nails. Red Bear cleared his throat. Hate to interrupt this touching moment, but we got a problem. What kind of problem? The kind where Blackwood's got friends, rich friends, friends who might decide they don't want to see him hang. Let them come. We'll be ready. Will we? You got no house, no weapons except what you're carrying, no place to make a stand if someone decides to break him out of jail. Ezra looked around the church, at the high ceilings, the thick walls, the windows that could be defended. We make our stand here. In a church? Why not? God's house is as good a place as any to fight the devil. You think God's gonna take sides? I think God already did. Otherwise, Sadie wouldn't be standing here. Pastor Jennings stepped forward. You can use the church. Use whatever you need. It's the least I can do after. He trailed off, shame coloring his face. After you failed those children? Sadie's voice was cold. After you heard their confessions and did nothing? Yes, after that. Jennings didn't flinch. I'm asking for a chance to make it right. Making it right, don't bring back Sarah Mitchell. Don't fix the bones that healed wrong. Don't give back the childhood Blackwood stole. I know, but maybe it can stop him from hurting anyone else. Sadie stared at him for a long moment. Then she nodded once sharp. All right, but if you fail again, I'll make sure everyone knows what you really are. Fair enough. They spent the rest of the day preparing. The townspeople came to help, some out of guilt, some out of genuine desire to make amends. They brought food, blankets, weapons. They boarded up windows, reinforced doors, turned the church into a fortress. Sadie worked alongside them, her small hands capable and sure. She didn't speak much, just moved from task to task with the efficiency of someone who'd learned to make herself useful to survive. Ezra watched her organize supplies, direct helpers twice her age solve problems with a practical wisdom that made his chest ache. This was what Blackwood had tried to break. This strength, this intelligence, this fierce determination to not just survive, but thrive. He'd failed. She was still here, still whole in the ways that mattered. You're staring, Red Bear said beside him. I'm observing. You're falling in love with the idea of being a father again. Ezra didn't deny it. Is that wrong? Depends. You gonna do it right this time? Gonna be there when she needs you? Gonna break down your walls and let her in? I'm trying. Try harder. That girl deserves better than trying. I know she does. Ezra's voice was rough. But trying is all I got right now. I'm 18 years out of practice at being human. Then practice more. She's giving you a second chance. Don't waste it being scared. Red Bear walked away, leaving Ezra alone with his thoughts. He was scared. Terrified, actually. Scared of failing Sadie the way he'd failed Grace. Scared of becoming stone again. Scared of loving someone and losing them. But more than that, he was scared of the alternative. Of sending Sadie away. Of going back to that big, empty house or whatever they'd rebuild in its place and living alone with his ghosts. That was worse than any fear of loss. That was death while breathing. He crossed to where Sadie was working and knelt beside her. Can I ask you something? She looked up from the rope she was coiling. Go ahead. When this is over, when Blackwood's trial is done and the dust settles, what do you want? What do you mean? I mean, do you want to stay with me permanent-like? He swallowed hard. I know I ain't much. Old and rough and spent too many years alone. But if you'll have me, I'd like to be your... He couldn't finish. The word stuck in his throat. My what? Sadie prompted gently. Your family. Your father, if you'll let me. Legal and binding. Adoption papers and everything. Sadie's eyes filled with tears. You mean that? Every word. But what if I'm difficult? What if I talk back or cause trouble, or ain't the kind of daughter you want? Then you'll be exactly like every other child who ever lived. And I'll love you anyway. The tears spilled over. Sadie threw her arms around his neck, and Ezra held her while she cried into his shoulder. Not sad tears, but the kind that come when something locked up finally breaks free. I want that, she whispered. I want that more than anything. Then it settled. Soon as the law allows, we'll make it official. You'll be Sadie Ruth McAllister." She pulled back, wiping her eyes. "That sounds real nice." "Yeah, it does." They sat together in the quiet of the church, father and daughter in all but name. And for the first time since Grace died, Ezra felt something like peace. It didn't last. The attack came that night. They were sleeping in shifts, 3 people awake at all times watching the doors and windows. Ezra had the midnight watch with Red Bear and Pastor Jennings when they heard the horses. A lot of horses, coming fast. "How many?" Ezra asked. Red Bear peered through a gap in the boarded window. 10, maybe 12, all armed. Blackwood's friends, or people he paid, doesn't matter which. Ezra woke Sadie and the others. They took their positions marksmen at the windows, others with extra ammunition. Sadie and the women in the back room, where the walls were thickest. "Don't come out unless I call for you," Ezra told her. "I can fight. I know you can, but I need you alive more than I need you fighting. Understand?" She nodded reluctantly and retreated to the back. The riders surrounded the church. Their leader, a man Ezra didn't recognize, well-dressed and hard-faced, called out from horseback. "McAllister, we're here for the girl. Send her out and we'll leave peaceful." "She ain't here." "Don't lie. We know she's in there. Deacon Blackwood has powerful friends. Friends who don't appreciate seeing a man of God treated like a common criminal." Then maybe Blackwood should have acted like a man of God instead of a monster. "That's slander. The courts will decide his guilt or innocence. Until then, the girl comes with us, for her own protection." "Her protection?" Ezra laughed, harsh and bitter. "You mean for his protection? Keep her from testifying. Make sure the truth stays buried." "Last chance, McAllister. Send her out or we come in." "Come ahead. We'll be waiting." The leader raised his arm. His men dismounted, spreading out looking for weak points. "Here they come," Red Bear said. The first wave hit the side door, 4 men with a battering ram trying to break through. The door held reinforced with beams and prayers, but it wouldn't last forever. "Fire over their heads," Ezra ordered. "Warning shots. Don't kill unless you have to." The defenders fired. Bullets splintered wood above the attackers' heads close enough to make them duck far enough to avoid hitting them. They retreated, regrouped, tried the windows. This went on for an hour. Attack, defend, retreat, regroup. The church held but barely. Ammunition was running low. People were getting tired. And the attackers showed no signs of giving up. Then Sheriff Tucker appeared at the end of the street. He wasn't alone. Behind him rode Marshal Briggs and 10 federal deputies, all armed, all wearing expressions of grim determination. "This is federal law," Briggs's voice carried across the night. "Drop your weapons and disperse or be arrested for interfering with a federal investigation." The attackers froze. Their leader looked between the church and the deputies, calculating odds, measuring risks. "The deacon will hear about this," he said finally. "The deacon is going to hang," Briggs replied. "And anyone who helps him will hang right beside him. Your choice." One by one, the attackers dropped their weapons and mounted their horses. They rode away into the darkness, leaving behind only tracks in the snow and the memory of what almost happened. Ezra opened the church door. Marshal Briggs dismounted and walked over. "You all right?" "We're fine. You got good timing." "Tucker came and got me. Said something felt wrong." Briggs looked at the sheriff. "Man's trying to make up for lost time." Tucker's face was drawn. "Can't fix what I ignored, but I can stop it from happening again." "That's all any of us can do." Ezra extended his hand. "Thank you." Tucker shook it. "Don't thank me yet. That was just the first attempt. Blackwood's trial is in 3 days. Between now and then, his friends will try everything to get him out or silence the witnesses. Then we keep watch, keep fighting. For how long? As long as it takes." The trial began on a Monday morning in late November. They'd moved it to Lander, to Judge Callahan's courtroom, away from Wind River and Blackwood's influence. The courtroom was packed townspeople who'd enabled him children he'd abused, witnesses who'd finally found their courage. Sadie sat in the front row between Ezra and Red Bear. She wore one of Martha's dresses, altered to fit, and her hair was braided neat and tight. She looked small and scared and absolutely determined. "You ready?" Ezra asked. "No, but I'm doing it anyway." "That's all anyone can ask." The judge entered. The trial began. The prosecution laid out their case methodically. Doc Carver testified about injuries he'd treated and questions he'd never asked. Sheriff Tucker confessed to ignoring evidence because he owed Blackwood money. Widow McGregor spoke about the supplies she'd sold and the screams she'd heard and pretended not to hear. Then it was Sadie's turn. She walked to the witness stand on legs that trembled but didn't fail. She sat in the chair, placed her hand on the Bible, and swore to tell the truth. The prosecuting attorney was gentle with her. "Miss Brennan, can you tell us about your time in Deacon Blackwood's care?" Sadie took a breath. Then she spoke. She told them about the cellar, about the days locked in darkness with no food and no water and no hope of escape. She told them about the belt about broken ribs, about learning to take a beating without crying because crying only made it worse. She told them about Sarah Mitchell. She was 13. She'd been with the deacon for 2 years. She tried to run once, got caught, got beat so bad she couldn't walk for a week. Sadie's voice was steady, mechanical, reciting facts because feeling them was too dangerous. "One night I heard her crying in the cellar, heard her begging him to stop. Next morning she was dead. He said it was consumption, but I saw the blood, saw where she'd tried to cut her way out with a broken bottle." The courtroom was silent. Every eye was on this small girl telling impossible truths. "He killed her," Sadie said. "Maybe not with his own hands, but he killed her sure as if he had. And he would have killed me too if I hadn't run." The defense attorney stood to cross-examine. He was smooth professional, paid well to create doubt where there was only certainty. "Miss Brennan, you've had a difficult life. Losing your mother, being placed in the deacon's care. That must have been traumatic." "Yes, sir. Traumatic enough to perhaps imagine things, exaggerate, blame an innocent man for your own pain. I didn't imagine broken ribs. Children fall. They have accidents. I didn't imagine Sarah Mitchell's blood on the cellar floor. You were, 10 years old in the dark. How can you be certain what you saw?" Sadie leaned forward. Her voice dropped, went cold as winter. "Because I cleaned it up. He made me scrub Sarah's blood off the floor with lye soap while he prayed over me. Told me it was a lesson about the wages of sin." She paused. "You don't forget something like that. Not ever." The defense attorney opened his mouth, closed it, sat down. The judge called for a recess. Ezra found Sadie in the hallway afterward. She was shaking, her face pale, her hands clutching her stomach. "You did good," he said. "I feel sick." "That's normal. You just faced your demon in front of God and everybody. You're allowed to feel sick." "Did I do enough? Did I say the right things?" "You told the truth. That's all you needed to do." She looked up at him with those honey-brown eyes full of doubt and fear and desperate hope. "What if they don't believe me?" "Then they're fools." "But Sadie..." He knelt down so they were eye to eye. "Even if the worst happens, even if Blackwood walks free, you did something today that nobody can take away. You stood up. You spoke truth. You showed every person in that courtroom that you ain't broken. That's victory no matter what the jury says." She threw her arms around him and held on like he was the only solid thing in a world gone liquid. "I'm scared," she whispered. "I know. Me too. What are you scared of? Losing you. Failing you. Being the kind of father who let his daughter down when she needed him most. You won't." "How do you know?" She pulled back and looked at him with ancient eyes in a child's face. "Because you're here. Because you fought for me. Because you chose me when you could have walked away." She paused. "That's what makes you different. That's what makes you mine. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. It felt like 6 years. Ezra paced the courthouse steps, while Red Bear sat still as stone, and Sadie counted the boards in the floor. People came and went, casting glances, whispering, waiting for the verdict that would define what happened next. Finally, the bailiff called them back inside. The jury filed in. Ezra tried to read their faces but found nothing. They were farmers and merchants and working men, ordinary people, asked to judge the extraordinary evil of a man who'd worn God's name like armor. Has the jury reached a verdict? We have your honor. On the charge of murder in the first degree regarding Sarah Mitchell, how do you find Hus guilty? The word hit like thunder. Sadie grabbed Ezra's hand, squeezed so hard her knuckles went white. On the charges of assault, battery, and unlawful imprisonment of minors, how do you find guilty on all counts? The courtroom erupted. People shouting, crying, applauding. Judge Callahan banged his gavel until the noise subsided. Cyrus Blackwood, you have been found guilty of crimes against children in your care. Crimes that violate not only the laws of this territory, but the fundamental decency of human society. I hereby sentence you to death by hanging sentence to be carried out 30 days from today. Blackwood stood. For the first time since the trial began, his mask cracked completely. The urbane sophistication, the pious gentleness, the careful control, all of it shattered, revealing the monster underneath. "You're all fools," he screamed. "I was doing God's work. Those children were wicked, sinful, in need of correction. You'll answer for this. You'll all answer when God strikes you down for—" The deputies dragged him from the courtroom, his voice fading into incoherent rage. Judge Callahan turned to Sadie. "Miss Brennan, you showed remarkable courage today. I'm ruling that custody will be granted to Ezra McAllister pending formal adoption proceedings. You'll have a home, a family, and the protection of this court." Sadie couldn't speak, just nodded, tears streaming down her face. Court is adjourned. They left the courthouse into afternoon light that felt different than morning light, cleaner, somehow brighter, full of possibility. People stopped them on the steps to offer congratulations, apologies, promises of help rebuilding. Doc Carver approached with his hat in his hands. "Miss Sadie, I know I got no right to ask, but would you accept my apology for failing you when you needed help most?" Sadie looked at him for a long moment. Then she held out her hand. "I'll accept it, but you gotta do better. For the next child who comes to you hurt, for the next person who needs someone to believe them." "I will, I swear it." She shook his hand. He walked away with something like redemption on his face. They rode back to Wind River as the sun set, painting the snow gold and pink and purple. The valley spread out below them, vast and beautiful, and home. "What do we do now?" Sadie asked. "Now we rebuild. House first, then the barns, then everything else." "That's gonna take a long time." "We got time. Got all the time in the world." Red Bear rode beside them, his face thoughtful. "You know what you're signing up for, Ezra? Raising a child, being responsible for another human being." "I know. It ain't easy. She'll challenge you, push back, make you crazy." "I'm counting on it." Sadie smiled. "You two talk about me like I ain't here." "That's because you're too smart for your own good," Ezra said. "Makes adults nervous." "Good. Adults should be nervous. They make too many mistakes." "So do children." "Then I reckon we'll figure it out together." They reached the ranch as darkness fell. The house was gone, burned to the foundation, but the barn still stood. The copper weather vane still turned on its roof, catching the last light of day. "We'll sleep in the barn tonight," Ezra said. "Start building tomorrow." They made camp in the hayloft. Red Bear built a small fire. Sadie spread out blankets, and Ezra stood at the open loft door looking out at the valley. "What are you thinking?" Sadie asked, coming to stand beside him. "I'm thinking about Martha, about Grace, about how I spent 18 years believing love was something I'd used up, something I couldn't feel again. And now I know I was wrong. Love ain't finite. It don't run out. It just grows, changes, becomes something new. Sadie leaned against him. Mama said the same thing, before she died. She said love's like water. Can't hold it in your hands. Gotta let it flow or it goes stagnant. Your mama was a wise woman. She was. I miss her. I know you do. But she's still here, in you. In the choices she made, the lessons she taught, the love she left behind. They stood together watching the stars emerge, father and daughter bound by tragedy and choice, and the stubborn refusal to give up on each other. Ezra, yeah. Thank you for believing me, for fighting for me, for choosing to love me even when it was hard. Wasn't hard, was the easiest thing I ever did. She looked up at him, and in the starlight he could see Martha's eyes and Grace's almost smile, and something entirely Sadie's, something fierce and bright and unbreakable. I love you, she said. The words hit him like a physical thing. He hadn't heard them in 18 years, hadn't let himself want to hear them, but now, here they were offered freely by a child who'd been given every reason to hate the world and chose to love it anyway. I love you too, he said, and his voice broke on the words. More than I knew was possible. She hugged him. He held her. And somewhere in the distance, the copper weather vane turned and turned, catching the moonlight pointing toward tomorrow. 3 months later, they signed the adoption papers. Judge Callahan presided over the brief ceremony in his chambers. Doc Carver and Red Bear served as witnesses. Widow McGregor came with a cake she'd baked herself, crying through the whole proceeding. Ezra McAllister, Judge Callahan said, "Do you swear to provide for this child, protect her, love her and raise her as your own?" "I do." Sadie Ruth Brennan, "Do you accept Ezra McAllister as your legal father?" "I do." "Then by the authority vested in me by the Wyoming Territory, I declare this adoption legal and binding. Sadie, you are now officially Sadie Ruth McAllister." Sadie's smile could have lit the whole valley. They celebrated at Widow McGregor's store. The whole town came, some to apologize, some to witness the good that could come from acknowledging evil, all to see the girl who'd survived and the man who'd remembered how to live. Pastor Jennings offered a blessing. Sheriff Tucker gave a toast. Doc Carver presented Sadie with a medical book inscribed, "To the bravest person I know." Red Bear pulled Ezra aside. "You did good." "We did good. Couldn't have done it without you." "Maybe. But it was your choice to open that window. Your choice to let her in. Your choice to break down the walls you'd spent 18 years building. Best choice I ever made." "Second best. Best choice was loving Martha. This is just you finally learning the lesson she was trying to teach." "What lesson's that?" "That love don't end when someone dies. It just finds new places to grow." Ezra looked across the room at Sadie, who was showing her adoption papers to a group of children with the pride of someone displaying treasure. "She looks happy." "She is happy. First time in her life, probably." "I'm gonna make sure it stays that way." "I know you will. That's why Martha sent her to you. She knew even after everything you still had it in you to be the man she fell in love with." "You think she's watching Martha and Grace both?" "I don't know about heaven or ghosts or any of that, but I know love doesn't just disappear. It changes form, becomes something else, something that endures." Red Bear put his hand on Ezra's shoulder. "They're here, in Sadie's eyes, in the way you hold her, in the second chance you both got. That's as close to proof as anyone gets." The party lasted until dark. Then they rode back to the ranch, to the new house they'd built on the old foundation, smaller than before, but warmer, filled with light and sound, and the possibility of laughter. Sadie ran ahead to let the chickens out her braid flying behind her, her voice raised in song. Red Bear tended the horses. Ezra stood in the doorway watching them both. These people who'd become his family, his purpose, his reason for waking up every morning and remembering what it meant to be alive. The copper weather vane turned above the barn, catching the last light of day. Ezra had thought about taking it down after the fire, but Sadie insisted they keep it. "It brought me home," she'd said. "Might bring someone else home too someday." Maybe it would. Maybe there were other lost children out there, other broken people looking for a place to belong. And if they found their way to this ranch, to this family built from ashes and grace, and the stubborn refusal to give up, well, they'd be welcome. That night, after Sadie was asleep in her new room with the window facing east toward the sunrise, Ezra walked up the hill to Grace's grave. The stone was clean. Sadie insisted on keeping it that way, bringing fresh flowers when the weather allowed, talking to the sister she'd never met like they were old friends. "Hey, Grace," Ezra said quietly. "It's your papa. I know I haven't been up here much lately. Been busy, building things, learning how to be a father again, learning how to be human." The wind stirred the grass. An owl called somewhere in the dark. "I want you to know about Sadie. Want you to know you've got a sister now. Not by blood, but by choice. And she's amazing, Grace. Smart and brave and so damn stubborn, it reminds me of your mama." He paused. "Reminds me of you, too." He knelt by the grave, ran his fingers over the carved letters. "I'm sorry I wasn't there when you needed me. Sorry I spent 18 years hiding from the pain of losing you instead of celebrating the joy of having known you. But I'm trying to do better. For Sadie, for your mama's memory, for you." The stars burned cold and bright above. The valley spread out below dark, except for scattered lights from distant ranches and the glow of town in the distance. "I think you'd like her. Sadie, I mean. She's got your mama's eyes and your stubbornness and her own kind of fire that nothing could put out. Blackwood tried, life tried, grief and loss and every bad thing you can imagine tried. But she's still here, still fighting, still believing good exists, even when the evidence says otherwise." Ezra stood brushed dirt from his knees. "She saved me, Grace. Came through my window like an answer to a prayer I didn't know I was saying. Reminded me what it means to love someone more than you love your own pain. That's a gift. Maybe the greatest gift anyone's ever given me." He turned to go, then stopped. "One more thing. That gate, the iron sun gate that stayed locked for 18 years, we took it down, melted it, used the metal to make something new. A weather vane. Copper and iron together shaped like a rising sun. It turns in the wind now, free and open, pointing whichever way life takes us." He smiled in the darkness. "I think your mama would have liked that. I think you would have too." He walked back down the hill toward the lights of home, toward the sound of Sadie singing in her sleep, toward the life he'd thought was over, but was actually just beginning. Behind him, the copper weather vane turned and turned, catching starlight pointing toward tomorrow. And in the silence between heartbeats, in the space where grief gives way to grace, Ezra McAllister finally understood what Martha had been trying to tell him all along. Love doesn't end when someone dies. It just finds new ways to live.